Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios tonight. Bridgestone Arena, where the Predators are taking on the Buffalo Sabres tonight, 7 o'clock. Our pregame is at 6, and we will be giving away a pair of tickets to tonight's game. Now, we got a lot of hockey to do. We got TD coming up at 3 o'clock with the TD Power Hour. We got a loaded show today. But we do have breaking news here off the top as the Nashville Predators have been a wild day. As the Nashville Predators, according to Elliot Friedman, and I guess now it's official, according to the Avalanche, have acquired Yakov Trenin. So Barry Trotz came on the show yesterday, or on Tuesday, and he said that, I'm trying to get deals done, but we'll see what happens. Trying to get extensions done. And I guess they weren't going to get one done with Yakov Trenin because...
The Preds have announced it too.
Okay, so give me the details here.
Okay, yes, it says we have a trade to announce. Colorado receives forward Yakov Trenin and defenseman Graham Sward, and Nashville receives defenseman Jeremy Hansel and a 2025 third-round pick.
Okay, so here's my question for all of that. Who the hell are those people? Like, who the hell is Graham Sward? And I feel like I know who this Jeremy Hansel is. I feel like I know that name.
He is a youngster, WHL, Western Hockey League, Seattle Thunderbirds in assists and points. He's a 6 foot, 190 pound blue liner.
So, I mean, he's not. He's down the road.
Youngster, yeah.
Okay, so I have no idea how good he is. Barry Trotz will be on the show tomorrow at the conclusion of the deadline. So we can ask him all about this stuff. We can ask him about Trenin. We can ask him about, I feel like I know the guy's name. They traded for him. Bavoulier?
Yes.
Bavoulier, him.
Yes.
So they added this morning, they traded a 5th-round pick to Chicago in order to get Anthony Bavoulier. And he's got a cap hit of about $4.5 million or $4.15 million, I think, and it's expiring. And I pulled up his info, and I'm like, this guy kind of stinks. But he had played with the Islanders, where Barry Trotz was the coach. And so clearly, Barry had come on the show earlier in the week, and he had said that he was worried about if he adds a guy, how's that going to affect the chemistry? Or if I add a guy that plays a different style than the Nashville Predators, that may not fit here. So at least I had a little bit of comfort when it came to this Bavoulier that Barry Trotz knows him and that Barry Trotz knows that he could fit chemistry-wise and style-wise. So that was a check. That I was fine with. But his stats are terrible. I mean, he's got 4 goals this year. What are we doing? But I'm not going to get too mad about it because it was a 5th rounder, and a 5th-round draft choice, in my opinion, is pretty much nothing. But when I saw the trade, I thought to myself, this probably means Trenin is out. Because I didn't think Barry was going to be trying to make moves to add guys just to add them, to scratch them every night, unless maybe this was like a depth for a playoff kind of thing. But even then, I was like, what's the point of paying and whatever's left on that $4.15 million cap hit? Like, what's the point of that for a guy who doesn't score? But when you're replacing Trenin, it makes plenty of sense because Trenin doesn't really score. So my guess is that's the move, which is Barry said, I can trade a 5th rounder and get this guy and get a 3rd rounder. And I think in any sport, we would agree, I'd rather have the 3rd rounder than have the 5th rounder. So I'm starting to understand that. I also think there's another caveat to this when it comes to what the Predators are doing. And it was a specific question that I asked Barry on Tuesday, which was about the young guys at Milwaukee that we haven't seen. And he said on Tuesday that he thinks Zachary Leroux, who was a 1st-round pick a couple of years ago and profiles as one of those kind of bottom 6 grinder-type players, he said that Zachary Leroux is they claimed some Jarrett Anderson Dolan, who, again, I don't know anything about him either, but they claimed him from L.A., and I think what the Predators may do is the Predators may scratch him a couple of nights and then waive him and try to send him down to Milwaukee to take the spot of Leroux, who I think could be coming up here to Nashville probably sooner rather than later. So it's all kind of like this jigsaw puzzle that they're putting together. But as far as losing Trennan, I'm not upset about that. A third-round pick is not nothing. I'm trying to think, who's been a third-round pick that the Predators have had that has made a difference over the years? I know first-round picks. I know second-round picks. I know fourth-round picks. I cannot think of a third-round pick.
That's a good question. It's a little bit of an in-betweener.
But that's okay. Again, the other thing that these do is they're trade chips. Like, that's the one thing that I have always believed when it comes to the Predators. I have always believed that the Predators are going to get their high-end forward. You know, is he going to be a big boy like a Connor McDavid? Probably not, because you can't get a Connor McDavid unless you draft him. Like, you can't get Austin Matthews unless you draft him. It's like if he doesn't like the coach, that's fine. They'll fire the coach. Like, if he doesn't like the GM, they'll fire the GM. If he doesn't like the owner, they might sell the team. Like, that guy is the most important guy, and everybody treats him that way. So they'll give him whatever money, and you can't get those guys until they're at the stage of their careers that Patrick Kane is now. But I do think that there are some other guys that the Predators could get, and I think what's going to happen is at some point over the next year, between this offseason and next trade deadline, there's going to be a high-end forward, kind of like Matthew Tkachuk, who doesn't want to play where they are right now. And that team will have the choice of, do we move off and go out and get, assets for this guy, or do we keep him and let him play the end of this year and get nothing for him, which is what the Columbus Blue Jackets let happen with Artemi Panarin and those guys when they acquired them that year, and Duchesne and everything else, and they got nothing. Like, they had a great team, and they won that first round against Tampa, but they didn't get anything out of it, and then they lost all those guys. So is he going to be a rental, or is he? So I think there's going to be one of these guys, and the Predators are going to be attractive to that guy because Nashville has no state income tax. It's a great city. Plus, it's going to be a young, exciting team, kind of like it is now. They've got an offensive coach, and they've got cap space to be able to pay somebody a high-end contract. And when that day comes, the Predators are going to have to give up a lot in order to get that player. And so the more draft choices that you accumulate right here are the more trade chips that I think the Predators would have to be able and just, boom, just pop it in right there. Now, Tommy Novak apparently was a third-round pick. So a third-round pick is not nothing. A fifth-round pick, for the most part, I mean, you wipe your tush with those and put them in the toilet and then flush. That you don't worry about. So basically what it sounds like is Barry Trotz traded a 2024 fifth and Trennan, and he got this defensive prospect and a 2025 third. Makes sense to me. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. And there are still more trades to come because I was listening to the midday show today, and Caroline asked Elliot Friedman if the Predators were going to make more moves, and Elliot said, I wouldn't be surprised. And I kind of laughed out loud because it's like, well, yeah, it's kind of a binary yes or no question. Not that Elliot would have any way of knowing whether or not they were going to make more moves. But when I heard that, I'm like, they are absolutely going to make one more move. And that move is probably tomorrow. The Predators are going to accept a salary retention as two teams are trying to work out a deal. The Predators will be the third team that brokers the deal, and they will give up nothing, and they will get another draft choice in return. And that is another trade chip. So I got to be honest. When I saw the addition of Beauvillier today, and I looked at his stats, and I'm like, hey, he kind of looks like he sucks. I thought to myself, well, there's got to be some other move coming. It can't just be Barry Trotz is adding this guy because I just want to make sure I have more depth down the stretch. Not when he's come on the show and he's talked about how they've got Parsonen down in Milwaukee and they've got this one down in Milwaukee. They got Parsonen and they've got Tomasino at Milwaukee and LaRue. And then if they want to go on defense, they've got Stasny and obviously they've got a goalie at Milwaukee. So I was like, wait a minute, hold on. They're just acquiring this guy to acquire this guy? And I've been on board with every move that Barry Trotz has made. Although Willie accused me today, Ian, of not liking the Gus Nyquist signing. I don't remember that.
I don't know. I'll have to go back and check.
I don't remember having an opinion on the Gus Nyquist signing. I mean, I've been full on board this Barry Trotz train for the whole entire last year that he's been here. Now, I will say this. That does not mean that he gets a free pass. So if he does something that we don't like, we're going to say we don't like it. And so today, when they made this move just to add this guy, I was like, what's the point? Now they trade Trennan. Now I got it. Got it. Because if you just added to add, kind of felt like when David Poyle just added Eric Goodbranson just to add Eric Goodbranson. Or when they added, who was it? P.A. Parento. When they added P.A. Parento at the deadline just to add, what are you doing here? And so with this guy, Beauvillier, his stats are terrible. But, again, Barry knows him from New York. And they clearly weren't going to get anything for Yakov Trenin in return, so they just moved on. And I don't have a problem. Trenin, as far as I'm concerned, a third-round pick's not nothing. You've got Tommy Novak for that. But Trenin, I don't see any reason to commit to Trenin long-term. And I don't know what deals the Predators had offered him as far as what he could or could not have wanted or anything like that. But I just don't know, with all these young guys at Milwaukee, how many spots there are. And the one thing that's also going to happen is as top 6 guys from Milwaukee come up, like Kimmel whenever he's ready, that's going to push somebody down. So I didn't, again, see a long-term future there for Trenin, and I don't have a problem with this deal. Now, the Beauvillier thing I don't have a problem with now because I think he's the replacement for Trenin. And the Jarrett Anderson Dolan, the kid from L.A. who they acquired with a $700,000 cap hit, I think he is ultimately going to end up in Milwaukee, and somebody in Milwaukee is going to get the call up here. That's my gut. As far as the prospects, what was the name of this prospect the Predators traded?
Graham Sword?
Graham Sword. As far as this Graham Sword is concerned, and again, I've never heard of this Graham Sword.
It's S-W-A-R-D, if I'm saying that correctly.
So I've always joked about do Preds prospects on your own time. That's always been my joke. But now that the Predators have not been so good lately and they've gotten into the draft and the prospects and the picks, I've gotten more into accepting of it. I would say I feel like I have a good idea of 70% of actual minor leaguers that the Predators have that can actually play in the NHL. Or there's a potential that could play in the NHL. I've never heard of this guy. I have never, ever heard of this guy. And then the guy they got in return, again, another prospect, I've never heard of that guy either. So we'll need to get...
Sword was a 5th-round pick in 2022, defenseman.
Do we know where he was playing at?
It says Spokane in the WHL.
Okay. I think they're the Chiefs.
They are.
Yes. All right. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Again, we're going to give away Predators tickets later today for the game tonight against the Buffalo Sabres. We will do that. 615-737-1025. If you got a thought on the trade deadline, let's react to it. Then we'll get into some football before we get to TD. 615-737-1025. Again, the breaking news. Yakov Trenin to the Avs. Anthony Beauvillier to the Predators. Again, cap hit of $4.15 million. Guy scored 4 goals this year between Vancouver and Chicago, but he did play with Barry Trotz in New York, so you know that Barry probably has a comfort level there. And my guess is that Beauvillier will long-term take his spot. I would guess, Ian, that Goryanov is going to be in the lineup tonight.
Maybe, yeah, I guess so for Yakov.
I mean, somebody has to play.
Somebody has to play, so probably a safe bet, yeah.
Or Tyson Barrie gets in there and they up the D, but I don't like when they do that.
7D, yeah.
I don't like that.
Probably Gurionov, yeah.
615-737-1025. We'll react to that next. Stillman and Company right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Window Nation. That's right. You know I love Window Nation. Window Nation takes great care of my home. I brought them out. I said, okay, go ahead, tell me about your windows because I'm out here telling everybody about Window Nation, but I need to know what Window Nation's about. So take a look at my windows and tell me what I need to do. And Window Nation said to me, they're like, your windows are good. You don't need to replace these windows. And I said, man, that is really, really, really comforting to me that Window Nation would say, hey, we don't need to replace these windows. Because, you know, it's like a car mechanic. Sometimes you take it there and they're like, oh, we got 50,000 things you can do to your car. And that'll be 1,000, that'll be that. Not Window Nation. They will do for your home and your windows exactly what is needed. So if you need help controlling your energy costs, it's probably because you've got bad windows. If you've got windows that won't close all the way, if they're cracked, if they're leaky, you want to make sure to get them replaced. And right now is the time, because for every 2 windows you buy, you'll get 2 windows for free. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder that thousands have trusted Window Nation. Do not miss out. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free, plus 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. That's 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Where do you think you are with Carrier and Trennan as pending UFAs? Should we expect more signings to come here, or is Novak it?
Well, I think we're going to try. I think that's we are trying. I think that's the the answer can only come from their representatives. There's been some offers made, and from that standpoint, we'll just have to play a little bit of chicken and the egg type of thing. They're wanting to know where we are going forward. They'll make an offer, we make an offer, counter offer, and we're through that all process. So there's a certain point where that's it for me. I gotta stop. I gotta hold the line for for certain guys, and if they want to cross the line, then we have to maybe make change. At the same time, we can hang on to those guys and use those guys as free agents.
Hey, that was Barry Trotz on our show, and right there he was like, I'm negotiating here, going there, and then we'll see, and then bam, Trennan's gone. So Trennan has been traded to the Avs for a 2025 third, and there were a couple of prospects that swapped that we don't know anything about, whether or not they're any good. That's a different discussion for a different day. So they had three really important UFAs, right? Novak signed, Trennan traded, and then that leaves Carrier. And I don't know, the temperature on Barry Trotz. Remember, he came on the show, and he said last week, I'm not losing Novak for nothing, and was very clear about that. That got a deal done with Novak. With Carrier, we see these defensemen now starting to fly off the shelves. We know that Spencer Stastny's at Milwaukee. We know that they like Spencer Stastny at Milwaukee, and they would like to bring him up here at some point. I don't know what's going to happen with Carrier. That one is still a question mark. But again, the Predators have also added Anthony Beauvillier. From the Chicago Blackhawks. Guy scored 4 goals this year. And I looked it up this morning, and I'm like, Ian, you know my rule on players that they acquire, right?
You have to have heard of them.
In order for me to think that they're any good, in order for me to sit here and say, now, I'm not upset if the guy stinks. I'm not upset because it was a 5th-round pick. This is not a 1st-round pick, obviously. So I won't be upset if the guy sucks. But as far as this guy's going to be good, I don't do that. Because if I don't know who the player is, then chances are they're not very good. In fact, Vingan put me up to the test today, Ian. He texted me and he was like, do you know who Sam Reinhart is? And I was like, he played on the Panthers, right? And he was like, he still does. I was just checking because he's a good player. And I was like, nah. I'm like, that's Sam Reinhart. He shoves it up the Preds keister every time they play, him and that Verhaeghe. I know Barkov and Tkachuk are their stars, but those two guys just freaking kill the Predators every time they play. I know exactly who that is, and that's what I'm talking about. If I know who you are good. And so I've never heard of this Beauvillier guy. I looked at his stats.
Well, he played a lot of time in the Eastern Conference, with the Islanders.
Sam Reinhart plays in the Eastern Conference.
That's true.
Don't cover for him.
So he's flashed. It's been a year or two.
Let's pull up old Beauvillier's stats. So I looked it up this morning, and I'm like, ugh. But then I saw the New York Islander thing, and I'm like, okay, he played for Trotz. And so Barry, probably sees a role for him, knows he'll fit.
Former first-round pick, 28th overall.
No. We do not do that around here. We do not do, he was a former first-round pick. A lot of people are former first-round picks who stink. That's how you end up with Andre Dillard, is if you convince yourself that someone might be good because they are a former first-round pick.
He has
Everybody
speed.
In the league is a former first-round pick.
So he'll have speed, and so he could fit the Brunette system, I think.
So in 45 games played this year, he's got 4 goals and 10 assists. And he's -2, but a lot of that came with the Blackhawks, who were just downright terrible. So, but again, it doesn't matter if he stinks because they give up a 5th-round pick for him, and if he takes somebody's spot, it's going to be Trennan's, and that wasn't an overly valuable spot. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Matthew in Nashville says, isn't Zachary Leroux the guy at the AHL in the Canadian League that used to play before Milwaukee called him up, and he was basically the Vontaze Burfict of minor league hockey? And the answer to that is, I think. We used to joke that they drafted Happy Gilmore in the 1st round. And then I think, isn't his nickname Happy because he's Happy Gilmore?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
Okay, so that's Leroux. But again, if he were to come up here, Barry said it on the show Tuesday, 4th-line role. That's what Trennan is. He's a checker. He's a 3rd, 4th liner. One texter says, I'm sure they're working on it behind the scenes, but I would love to know what you think the holdup is as to why the Predators have not traded Tyson Barrie. So my theory behind why Tyson Barrie is still on the Predators is similar to my theory of why we do not have a baseball team, a Major League Baseball team in Nashville. And you know what that theory is? Nobody wants to pay for it.
Money.
Everybody's like, oh, we should get a baseball team. All right, you want to build a stadium for $2 billion? Nope. I'm good. No, thank you. And so when it comes to Barrie, I think that there are a lot of teams that wouldn't mind adding him to their team. But he's got, like, what is it, a $3 million cap hit or a 2-point-something million dollar cap hit?
I want to say it was 4.
4. Nobody's paying for that. So I'm not, no, sir. Caleb asks, who's taking Trennan's spot? As of now, I think it's Beauvillier. I think that's why they acquired him. But at the same time, Willie today, before they traded Trennan, said that his style is different than Trennan's, which made me think that, okay, maybe it's somebody else who's going to take Trennan's spot that's already at Milwaukee or something like that. That I couldn't tell you. But I'm going to guess that it was Beauvillier. A bunch of people are texting to the text line that Tommy Novak was a third-round pick. One texter said, Beauvillier had 27 points in his last 2 playoff runs with the Islanders, and I believe Trotz added him for playoff scoring. I mean, look, man, that's great. It's like Willie today when I was like, yeah, I think this guy, again, it's a 5th-round pick, so I don't care if he stinks. But I'm like, I mean, he's probably, scores 4 goals. And Willie was like, no, look at his stats. That's with the Avalanche, or with the, that's with the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks don't score any goals. I'm like, well, they're allowed to score goals. I guess he just didn't. So before that, last year, he had a total of 18 goals, which is not good. The year before that, 12 goals. And then the year before that, in a shortened season, he had 15 goals. And the guy's had 20 goals once, and it was 21. And not only that, that was 6 years ago.
His second season.
So let's not kid ourselves here. It's not like the Predators acquired an all-star. But that's okay, because they traded a 5th-round pick. And so if you trade a 5th-round pick and the guy is nothing, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, you do that, that's fine. Wes in Clarksville says, is the NHL cap fake too, Jared? Which I'm glad you asked for 2 reasons. The first reason is it feels like it's starting to get there. Like, it feels like that long-term injured reserve loophole, it feels like it's starting to get there. And I understand why the long-term injury reserve loophole exists. The reason that they do that is because they don't want a team to lose a player like a Roman Josi, knock on wood, at the beginning of a season, and now we can't field a team because Roman Josi's taking up all this space and he can't play because he's out for the year. That's the whole point of that. But what's happened is, because there's not a salary cap in the playoffs, is teams like Vegas are basically like, hey, you're hurt, and so you're going to sit out the rest of the year, and we're going to put you on long-term injured reserve, and that'll clear up $10 million, and then we'll go get 4 more players to fill that $10 million spot, because when we get to the playoffs, you can all come back because there's no salary cap. And that is ridiculous. Like, what is happening with Vegas is ridiculous. It is a total mockery of the intention of the rule. Texter says it's Beauvillier, and he doesn't play like Trennan. He's a speed and stick skill guy.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, again, you asked me who's taking Trennan's spot. I think it's him. They're not bringing him in to play on the first line, folks.
Beauvillier would fit better on that line anyways, with Glass and Sissons to give it a little bit of extra scoring punch.
Sure. But he's not going in there to go on the first line. Like, it's not happening. So I think he's the guy who's taking Trennan's spot, if I had to guess. But again, Barry will join us tomorrow. We'll have all that to ask him on. 615-737-1025. But the other texter did say, he said, is the NHL cap fake? Because there is some news that's coming out of the NFL in which a lot of people are pointing to, oh my God, Jared, look at these salary cap cuts. And I want to talk about them, and we will touch on that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. And I may give away those Predators tickets once I get done talking about Hiller, but you better. But Ian, go ahead and X out the phone so nobody can call in right now. So you can't, don't jump to your phone right now, or you will not win those tickets. Let's talk about Hiller, though. And when you come to the game tonight, you will see that Hiller logo right there, center ice. They are proud supporters of the Nashville Predators and the Tennessee Volunteers and the Vanderbilt Commodores. And this month is Happy's Golden Ticket Sweepstakes at Hiller. Enter enter to win at HillerGoldenTicket.com. All you have to do is enter your email and you're automatically entered to win. Prizes include a $5,000 Hiller gift card, a $1,000 Hiller gift card, or one of 10, count them, 10, that's right, Happy Hiller Club memberships. Or take advantage of zero-interest financing for 12 months on select new HVAC systems, tankless water heaters, and whole home generators. Do not miss out. Enter to win now. That's HillerGoldenTicket.com. Ian? So you're probably wondering, where are the tickets, Jared? I crossed up my catcher. I did. I was trying to be dramatic. I made a pause before I set up the tickets, and then Ian just popped that right there. So, Ian, you may now unleash the phone lines. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025 right now, and you will win a pair of tickets to see the Predators take on the Buffalo Sabres tonight at Bridgestone Arena. It's college night with fans from the University of Kentucky showing their pride as part of the College Theme Night series with themed tickets, including a branded college hat and Preds hat. They're branded together. Tickets available at nationalpredators.com/tickets. Good luck on that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Hannah, the Buffalo Bills have made another big move here. They are releasing two-time Pro Bowl cornerback Tre'Davious White, designating him a post-June 1 salary cap casualty. And so that will allow them to spread out some of the absorption of the salary cap penalties that they'll have to take. But it will free up money for the Buffalo Bills against the salary cap. Keep in mind that the Bills came into today about $40 million over the salary cap. And now there have been a slew of moves that this team has made within the last hour, the latest being moving on from Tre'Davious White. Tre'Davious White won't be back. They have informed Jordan Poyer that he won't be back. They're releasing their center, Mitch Morse. They're processing the release of their running back, Naheem Hines. Deontay Hardy, the return specialist, they're releasing him. So the Buffalo Bills are trying to be cap compliant today with a slew of moves, some big names, but this is a defense now that's going to have some holes in the secondary that this team is going to have to figure out a way to address. And I know a lot of people have also wondered about the future of Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. Still continue to hear that he's not going anywhere, that he's going to be back in Buffalo for whatever that's worth.
Okay, so the only player that you know, he is absolutely staying in Buffalo. There's no question there. Schefter yesterday, again, the Bills made a bunch of moves. They released a 30-something-year-old center who was making $11 million. They released Jordan Poyer. Now, that move did surprise me a little bit. But we'll get to Poyer in a second. They released Tre'Davious White. They released those other two players. I don't even know who they are. And people were saying yesterday, see, Jared, the cap is real. Robbie and Joe this morning, ah, ha, 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 ha. Yeah, look at that salary cap move. Cap, cap, cap. First of all, everything Schefter just said there was so incredibly disingenuous because Tre'Davious White was given a June 1st designation. So that doesn't help them on their cap right now if we're technically talking about the cap. But again, these aren't cap decisions. These are cash decisions. Tre'Davious White, and every time you come on and you say Tre'Davious White, two-time Pro Bowler, former All-Pro Tre'Davious White, in 2019 and 2020. Tre'Davious White played 4 games last year, 6 games the year before that, 11 games the year before that. He's never healthy. So why would they pay him $17 million or whatever it is they were due? They weren't going to. So they cut him. So when I see the Bills getting rid of what I consider to be fat, that's what this is. This is trimming the fat. It worries me as a Titan fan, not because it's about being cap compliant and getting under the cap. That's not what Buffalo's doing here. Buffalo is going into free agency and they are going to spend. Buffalo is going to go get players. So when it comes to free agency, see, this is the thing about all the cap space that everybody talks about, is that there's some belief that because you've got more of it than everybody else, that you'll be able to spend more money or that you'll be able to get better players. But all Buffalo's doing is they're just slashing payroll so that they can then add to it with more reliable, better, and more premium position players. The old day, and I don't know if this was Bud Adams or if this was the rules. I used to ask Floyd, he used to say the rules were different when he was GM. But when the Titans had a cap purge after the 2003 season where they made it to the playoffs and they beat the Ravens and went to the divisional round against the Patriots, and then they had a cap purge, it wasn't Nyheim Hines who didn't play for them the year before because he got in a jet ski accident, or a corner who had played 10 games the last 2 years. It was Derek Mason coming off the best season he had as a wide receiver in his career. It was Kevin Carter, who was at that point a Pro Bowl caliber player. It was Samari Rolle, a legitimate, consistent number 1 corner. It was real players. Tre'Davious White is not a real player. So this, to me, is that these aren't cap moves. These are payroll moves. They are trimming the fat. They are going to be players in free agency, and I hate that. Because if it comes down to a player choosing, and I don't know what their needs are, but if it comes down to a player choosing between the Bills or the Titans, if all things are equal, chances are they're probably going to pick the Bills because that team has Josh Allen and that team goes to the playoffs every year. So when I see teams that are loading up for free agency, that are cutting guys, when somebody gets cut, it's a trimming the fat. It is we don't want this guy anymore, so we're going to cut him. I also heard somebody said on the Pat McAfee show that the Buffalo Bills have 11 draft picks this year. Well, that's why you cut your safety. That's why you cut your center. Because you just go draft them. They're not premium positions. You can draft them. You don't need to draft them number 3 overall. I don't see the Buffalo Bills getting rid of left tackle. I don't see them getting rid of pass rusher. What they've done is, this is what's happened. Ron Rivera was on NFL Live, where I guess he's joined ESPN. And he's worked with Brandon Beane before when Brandon Beane was in Carolina with him. And Ron Rivera told you, like, Brandon Beane is not making these cuts because he's going to sit on his hands in free agency.
Well, knowing Brandon, he probably has a plan. And the plan is probably designed around having to bring some new talent in, whether it's through the draft or he's got a couple of free agents he likes, or the answer might even be on his roster. But Brandon wouldn't do anything without having a plan. So I think he's prepared to move forward.
Okay. He's telling you, yeah, he's got a plan. This is what's happened. The owner in Buffalo, the rich owners, the Pagulas, who, by the way, their team's playing the Predators tonight, they've told their football people, here's how much money we have to spend this year. Now, again, that's not what the cap dictates. It is what the owner dictates. So if the owner says, and I looked at their payroll, I think it's around $200 million right now after they made those moves. If the owner says, we've got $240 million to spend on our roster this year, then that means that they can go out and spend $40 million in free agency. Like $40 million real dollars. That's what he's working on. Not this idea of, oh, see, Jared, they cut all these people, and it's all because of the cap. No, you will be competing with Buffalo now for free agents. The same way you'll be competing with Washington and these other teams. The team that I'm not worried about, that has, I think, again, these cap websites all differ. But the team that has the most cap space, I think, in the league is New England. And I don't worry about them at all because they don't have anybody that anybody wants to play with. And they're cheap. That's a cheap organization. So they're not going to go spend in free agency anyways. So the Buffalo Bills, again, it's like, oh, yeah, these are all cap moves. That's why they had to cut Tre'Davious White. They cut Tre'Davious White because he never plays. They don't want to pay $17 million for somebody who never plays. It's like Andre Dillard. You're going to cut Andre. I'm actually kind of surprised the Titans haven't cut Andre Dillard yet. But you are going to cut Andre Dillard. Not because it hurts the cap that Andre Dillard's on the team, but it's because you don't want to give him $7 million to sit his tush on the bench. That's why. But this idea that the Bills are, oh, this is a cap purge. This reminds me of like right after the season when everybody was like, hey, for everybody that thinks the cap's not real, the Bills, you'll see. Yeah. They cut Nyheim Hines. They cut a corner who never plays. They cut a center who makes $11 million, is in his 30s, and they already have a plan of, yeah, they're going to take the guard who's in his 20s who makes $1 million. They're going to move him to center, and there's a backup guard that they want to start, and he's going to start. That's like when the Titans got rid of Kenny Vaccaro so they could stick Amani Hooker in there. Cap. 615-737-1025. Now, there was a move that the Bills made that it seems like every team in the league is making. And I really can't truly explain it, except that I think that there may be another positional zoom that's going on here in the offseason. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025, TD at the top of the hour, as always, for the TD Power Hour here on Stillman and Company. Hey, tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight as Vandy women's basketball takes on Florida in the SEC basketball tournament. Pregame at 7:15. Tip-off is at 7:30. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
The Buffalo Bills have told Jordan Poyer, their all-pro safety, that they're moving on. Now, keep in mind that Buffalo came in today, Hannah, needing to clear about $40 million worth of salary cap space. And so they are essentially moving on from Jordan Poyer, and this is really the end of a chapter here in Buffalo because he and Micah Hyde had formed a long-running, successful safety tandem. Hyde is a free agent, may retire. Doesn't look like he'll be back in Buffalo. We know Jordan Poyer now will be moving on. They're restructuring the contract of Rasul Douglas as well. So there's some cap savings with more to come yet in Buffalo that they'll have to do to get under the salary cap. But obviously some big moves in Buffalo with them moving on from Jordan Poyer today. He now will become a free agent and add to the safety market here.
Boy, I tell you, Adam Schefter talks to you guys like you're idiots. When he talks about, they have to get under the cap, and then they will restructure Rasul Douglas, so that'll give him some more cap savings, so they're going to give him his money up front because he plays corner. But I was surprised not by the Poyer move. Poyer is 33 years old, and the last time he was an All-Pro was 3 years ago. Justin Simmons today got released by the Broncos, and I was surprised by that. Now, I think that has more to do with the Sean Payton teardown than it does with anything else. The same reason why Russell Wilson's out. Sean Payton needs his guy. MGS, my guy syndrome. So he's just going to tear it down to the studs. But the safety position, I don't know if you guys have been looking around the league, but everybody is ditching their high-price safeties. Everybody. Simmons, Poyer, Kevin Byard, Jamal Adams, Quadre Diggs, Eddie Jackson, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Washington's not re-signing Cameron Curl. What's happening here is that the NFL, like the running back position, has completely devalued the safety position. In fact, last year in the draft, the first safety went off the board at pick 45. 45. This is what's happened in the NFL over the last couple of years. NFL teams, like with the running back, they've realized we don't win because of our safeties. And I think Kevin Byard's a great example of this. In 2019, Kevin Byard signed a contract extension. And remember in 2020, he was horrendous. And there was talk about, did Byard get his contract? And because Byard got his contract, is Byard still, is he not focused? And I kind of shot that down because I knew the kind of guy Byard was, and I knew that Byard wasn't the kind of guy who was going to get paid and then kind of, take a vacation like Trent Brown. Like, no. Byard's, but they had no pass rush. They were horrible. They couldn't get to the quarterback. And so Byard looked bad because they could not get any pressure, and quarterbacks could stand in the pocket for 15 seconds. Then they signed to Nico Autry and Bud Dupree, and all of a sudden, Kevin Byard was good again. And so the moral of the story is you don't win because of your safeties. And if you don't win because of your safeties, why pay them? If I can get them at 45 in the draft, if I can go in the third round, fourth round, just go get it. Again, I was told today on the McAfee show, Buffalo has 11 draft picks. Well, they'll just draft them. And that's the same as the running back position. And last year with the running back position, teams were fine with paying their running back. They weren't fine with committing to the running back, right? The Raiders tagged Josh Jacobs. The Giants tagged Saquon Barkley. The Cowboys tagged Tony Pollard. And now those teams are like, no, we wouldn't pay $10 million for these guys because teams don't win because of the running back. And now safety has become the defensive running back. And just like the running back market, I think the safety market is going to be one where if a team wants a safety, they're going to wait a week or two. The Titans are going to need a safety to go next to Amani Hooker. And that's if the Titans think that Amani Hooker is worth $6.5 million. And I'll tell you right now, Amani Hooker is not worth $6.5 million on the open market. If the Titans released Amani Hooker today and he went into free agency, he'd be lucky to get a one-year deal at $3 million plus incentives. He'd be lucky. So they might cut him. So I don't think you're going to see running backs or safeties fly off the board on day one. You know what? We've gone through, we've crunched this 1,000 times, and it's like, man, there are no left tackles in free agency. There's Tyron Smith, he's always hurt. There's Trent Brown, he's got character issues. There's Jonah Williams, he stinks. That's it. Why? Because teams don't let left tackles get to free agency anymore. Wide receiver. Mike Evans was by far the best receiver on the market. Nope. They didn't let him get away. We look at receiver and it's like, well, can we convince ourselves that Darnell Mooney or Curtis Samuel or Calvin Ridley, and the only reason Ridley's not re-signed is because if Ridley re-signs with the Jags, then they have to turn around and give Atlanta their second rounder instead of their third rounder as part of the trade. So the safety position, I mean, you can wait until right before the draft, and I guarantee you some of these guys will still be there. If I was a safety and I was making $10 million, $14 million, whatever it was, I'd go to my agent and I'd be like, hey, the first $5 or $6 million offer that comes out, take it. Because if we don't take it, as soon as it gets offered to us, we're in trouble. Because we may be on the market when nobody wants to pay. And then you end up like DeAndre Hopkins. But the safety market has just completely collapsed. The running back market, it was like it was over time. The safety market, it's just like, woof. One texter says, if the NFL has devalued safeties, why did you get all in your feels about Kevin Byard? Because they were giving up on the season. Because the Titans had about 4 good players, just like giving up on Derrick Henry, right? Did you think you were a Super Bowl contender? Probably not. Is running back a valuable position? No. Would it have been a good idea to trade Derrick Henry? At the time, and even now, will say no. But it's the same. Byard is the Derrick Henry of the defense, and safety is now the defensive version of running back. Yeah, you go get a safety. That doesn't matter. I was thinking about this today. Who are the Chiefs safeties? Like, I know who their corners are. Snead and McDuffie. Ian, who are the safeties for the Chiefs?
I'm not really sure.
Who are the safeties in San Francisco?
Did Ward play safety?
I think Ward is on, I think he's on the Texans.
He could get moved?
Yeah, he's on the Texans.
I'm not sure.
Hufanga got hurt early in the year. And even Hufanga, they took him in like the 4th round, 5th round. There's just no market for safety. It's the running back position of defense. Safety. All right, the Titans in free agency. What is the plan? And what are we hearing? TD joins us coming up next. We're going to ask him. Hey, what's going on for the Titans in free agency? What are we hearing? And then also, how many holes realistically can be filled? And who are the guys on day one, the top of the market that you got to have them? We'll do that next with TD, Stillman and Company, live from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Bridgestone Arena tonight. Preds and Buffalo Sabres tonight at 7 o'clock right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. By the way, we will be here tomorrow as well, as Barry Trotz will join us after the trade deadline as the Predators continue to make moves, as you heard in Ian's update. But it is time now for the TD Power Hour. Teron Davenport is with us from ESPN, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, good to see you.
What's going on?
So let's get right to it. Free agency, TD's free agency preview. I got three big questions off the top. Number one, what do we know about the Titans in free agency? Let's start there.
You know what? Honestly, this year, I can't really say we know much. They've done a really good job of keeping things buttoned up and, you know, from getting out there. I don't know what direction that they're going to go. I will tell you one thing I do know is that they're not going to – they have money and they're not going to spend it just to spend it. It's all going to be very calculated, and don't expect them to just go out and do like the Eagles did when Vince Young coined the term, NFL-wise at least, the dream team. They're not doing that.
I do wonder if the reason why you haven't heard what their plans are and that they've been buttoned up has to do with who the coach is this year, or more importantly, who the coach is not. Because it's starting to seem like I'm hearing less about the Titans and things about the Titans since they've changed the coach.
Well, I'll say this for me, myself. You know, the former coach did help from time to time, but we all know his pipeline of information went through, someone else. But it's not just the coach. It's like within the building, they've done a really good job of keeping things pretty well buttoned up. I'll say it that way.
Number two, how many holes can realistically be filled in free agency by the Titans, and how many of them do we think, that has to be draft, or they're going to have to suck it up and they won't be able to fix it in free agency? But not every team, like even Super Bowl teams, have holes on their team. They just overcome them one way or another.
Well, this team has a chock full list of holes on the roster. And the first thing is they lack players that could just simply change a game. I still believe, and Chris Sanders, Derek Mason, they'll agree with me, Tajay Spears is a guy that is capable of maturing into someone that can literally change a game. He's a home run hitter. He's a guy that rarely goes down to first contact. So you have that. DeAndre Hopkins is DeAndre Hopkins. Traylon Burks, if he could be more consistent and healthy, they may have something there. I don't think the ship has sailed on him. But you look defensively, it's Jeffrey Simmons and what's left? There's not much left when you talk about someone that could change games. So I say all that to say this. Wide receiver and left tackle, I think you're going to have to take care of that in the draft. And that's why you hate to go into a situation saying, I got to use this pick on either of these positions and the other pick on whichever one is left over, because then it gets to be very predictable as far as what you're going to do. But that's where the Titans are. However, you look at the cornerback position, the guy you've continued to talk about, Kendall Fuller, is a very solid option. I think he's someone that they could very well end up signing, on the first day. But you look at some of these other players, Ahkello Witherspoon is a guy that I really like coming out of Colorado. He has nice size. He's not going to cost a lot of money. He had 3 interceptions last year with the Rams. He's a solid cover guy, so you have him. You could go – now, this is down the line. The only corner that I think should be signed first day, if they're going to make a move first day at that position, is Jeff Okudah remains somebody that I really would take a shot at him on a 1-year deal. So those are two options. Darius Williams becoming available is another one. Of course, you got Chidobe Awuzie as well. So I think you just got to kind of continue to watch things. I had some people asking me about Avonte Maddox, who the Eagles released, and to that I will – let me find the word. I will convincingly say no. But because there's just the injuries and stuff, it happened too much. As a matter of fact, Avonte Maddox, do you remember when the Eagles came here and I think it was
Mariota?
It was Mariota, and we're talking 20, I think it was 2018. 2018.
Touchdown to Corey Davis.
Corey
Wasn't it
Davis
over
touchdown
Avonte Maddox?
was on him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't want that. But, yeah, I mean, those are a few guys that I would take a look at.
Well, that's like, again, like Tre'Davious White would be a great player if he could stay healthy,
Yeah.
but he can't, so you can't invest money in him.
Yeah, you can't invest significant money in him. And unfortunately, what was the Achilles I think he had last year?
Yeah, and I think it was a knee the year before.
Yeah, so it's those are two major injuries, and modern medicine is great, but I don't know. But I tell you another guy too, not at corner, but at safety / corner. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I would definitely take a strong look at him. He had 6 interceptions the year that the DC now, Denard Wilson was in Philly, and they had the league-leading secondary when he was the DB coach. I would look at him because one thing you do need also, besides game-changing players, you need guys that could create turnovers. And creating turnovers helps change games. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he is a guy that consistently has a magnet for the football. I would look at signing him. But obviously it has to be the right deal because you see the safety position, what's happening with it.
Do you think that it's crazy? I think the safety position is becoming the new running back, the running back version of defense.
It was that, and that's the interesting thing because before Kevin Byard and Justin, what you're seeing actually now, Jared, the big deals because if you remember 3 or 4 years ago, that was the thing, paying the safeties. And now you're seeing the chickens come home to roost, so to speak, whereas those big deals that they did, a lot of the later money is coming due, and teams are like, I'm not doing that. And you got guys like Justin Simmons.
You talked about CJ Gardner-Johnson. For the Titans, especially because it looks like outside of Simmons and Landry, it really looks like they're kind of revamping the whole defense. Simmons might be a guy to bring in here, for $9 million or something to pay to say, hey, you and Kendall Fuller, you guys are going to be the veterans on the back end of the defense because Simmons is a great player.
Yeah, I mean that would shore things up pretty quickly. I tell you that much. And he is a great. He is probably the only safety. And I'm biased because KB is my guy. You know what I mean? But he's the only safety during that period when KB was doing what he was doing. He's the only safety where I would say, you know what? Yeah, he got KB. He's the only one. We're not going to have a conversation about any others.
Well, and not only that, when it comes to the safety market, I think Honey Badger just signed back with the Saints. And it's being reported as a 2-year, I think it's 2-year, $12 million or something like that. Well, these deals that these guys are getting released from are $14, $15, $13 million dollars.
Right.
And now we're talking about Honey Badger, who is not, an all-pro anymore in his career, but we're talking about 6. And I think that's, again, like running back. Like Derek was making 12 and a half, and I think if Derek gets out there, we're going to be talking $4 or $5 million for him.
Yeah.
And for these other guys like Pollard and Jacobs, and I think that the money's just not what it's going to be at those two positions because teams are saying we don't win because of our running back. We win because of our quarterback. We win because of our left tackle. We win because of our pass rushers and our receivers, and that's where the money's going to go.
Yeah, and I can see that, but I'll say this. When you have a guy like Justin Simmons back there, he's what you call an eraser, right? I mean, how many times you see DBs get beat and he's over top to swoop it in and knock the ball down or pick it off? Like, that's what he does. And then on top of that, you look at the length that he has to match up with tight ends. I mean, he's someone that I would pay that money to. I'm surprised the Broncos didn't try to renegotiate or anything like that, but it is what it is. He's on the market. I tell you another guy, a younger one that I think they should definitely look at, and that's Xavier McKinney from the Giants. He's 25 years old. He had 3 picks last year, and he's another one of those guys, just a rangy center fielder if you want to do that. We still have to see how this defense is going to look because, previously it was too deep most of the time.
So, TD, you brought up Kendall Fuller as a guy who I've been talking about zeroing in on. There are a couple other guys I'm starting to zero in on a little bit as, again, maybe not top of the market money, but day one guys that the Titans would have to maybe overspend a little bit on just to make sure that they get that guy. And I want your thoughts on that. We'll do it next. And the guys the Titans will be targeting as opposed to the positions where they can add. It's kind of complicated, but we'll do that next. Stillman and Company. TD Power Hour is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
It's a lot of cap space. I know that's what everyone is talking about, and how much we have, but we have to spend wisely. We don't want to just load up and just go, and spend money. Again, we're trying to build a long-term, consistent thing, and you can't do that spending all $90 million out front. We got to be patient. We got to position ourselves that there are going to be guys that come free in June and July, like when we got D-Hop, that we have to have the space for and be able to afford it. And plus, we have to have money for operating costs moving forward throughout the fall, which I think for most of the season we were in the top 5 and having space available. So we plan to be active, but we're going to be patient and let everything come to us.
That was Rand Carthon at the Combine. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. So, TD, you brought up Kendall Fuller as a guy that day one, and you and I both probably agree on Fuller. I kept coming back to him. He's got experience with Chris Harris. He's a day one guy, which means that if his market value is, let's say, $14 million a season, you might want to have to pay $16 just so you make sure you get him, right?
Yeah, you may have to pay a little bit more to get him.
I mean, it may be what Pro Football Focus says. Let's see, 3 years, $40 million. So what would that be? 3 years, 40. That's 13.3, I think.
Yeah, 13.3 and change.
What do you think that the actual money, given the market, would come out for him?
Well, he's only 29 years old too, so I think I think that's a reasonable deal. He could come in right around there, depending on what you guarantee. That's really where it's going to be.
So I think they've got to zero in on a guy like that. A couple other guys I've zeroed in on, and I want your opinion. Number one, Jermaine Illuminor, the right tackle of the Raiders, and right tackle is not a pretty market right now. It's not maybe as ugly as left tackle, but it's not pretty either. And with Jermaine Illuminor, he's got the history with Bo Hardigree, who's now the quarterback's coach, so he can give the thumbs up, thumbs down if he thinks he would be a good fit. But also last year, he played 17 games in each of the last 2 years, which, as we've learned with the Titans, availability is as important as anything else that somebody can do. Mm-hmm. And while he allowed 6 sacks last year, most of those came very early. And when they made the switch and got rid of McDaniels, he played much better. Pro Football Focus thinks 2 years, 14.5 for him. That would be a guy who, again, plays 17 games, starts, plays. He's not a big name, and it wouldn't be a big contract, but that's the kind of guy that I have kind of zeroed in on. What do you think about him in right tackle?
It allows you to shore up the position, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't give you someone that says, okay, boom, we signed him. Now our offensive line is going to be among the best in the league. It doesn't do that, but it does allow you to say, okay, boom, we signed him. Now on 3rd and 12, if we want to do true 5 to 7 step drops, we could do that. We don't have to worry about Will Levis getting killed. That's the way I would look at it if I were the Titans and signing him. That's a good name to mention. And then you look at it, as compared to, so you look younger than him. You got Jonah Williams, but he has question marks. So I think and he's also going to want a bit more money because he's younger on the market. So that's a good one there. I like that one.
And then at wide receiver, and this is the big question I have, and I actually texted you about this earlier in the week, which is, I think you and I can agree that they're going receiver at 38.
Or 7.
Or 7. But that would probably be the speed, like an outside guy that they would take, who probably could move inside, but definitely an outside guy that they could take. On the free agent market, Curtis Samuel played 70% in the slot with Washington, but when he was in Carolina, he could play outside.
Yeah.
And they didn't target him deep in Washington, but he also had Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin on his team, which meant his role may have been a little different. And while there are other receivers like Gabe Davis, who's a deep threat, or Hollywood Brown, who's a deep threat, I look at Samuel and I see him and Tyler Boyd as slot guys, and I'm like, do they want a slot guy in free agency at receiver? And if they do, I think because of the versatility, I give the nod to Samuel over Boyd. What do you think of that receiver conundrum?
Well, Boyd could play on the outside. He could do it as well. He worked a lot in the slot just because, you got Chase and Higgins, and they rotated, throughout how they did things. But I would sign Boyd before Curtis Samuel. Mm-mm. I signed Darnell Mooney before any of them, though. That's who I get. Darnell Mooney is a guy, he trained here in Nashville. Derek Mason trained him before the combine and all that stuff. But Mooney, you just go 2 years ago. I mean, people look at Hollywood Brown and what he did. Mooney was right within about 70 yards of him. You know what I mean? And Mooney is still a legit deep threat. Like, he will go up and he will get that thing. I like Mooney with Will Levis's arm, and that gives you that speed on the outside.
So last year, Curtis Samuel had a quarterback rating of 85 when he was targeted. Mooney was 56.2, but I wonder how much of that was – I'm not a huge Justin Fields guy, so I wonder how much of that was Fields and the bad offense more than it was Mooney.
I mean, it's a combo of the two. I mean, there were times where Mooney was running open. Justin Fields isn't, in my opinion, as bad of a quarterback as people make him out to be. But, I mean, that offense was just in itself was – outside of the Fields to DJ Moore combination, like that was the only thing clicking in there. Every once in a while, you know, Cole Clement, you know, they were able to get him going too. But
that offense was horrible.
Yes.
I mean, that offense was – so if it came down – see, I think that I really think they could get Mooney. I think they could wait and get a guy like Mooney or a guy like Boyd or a guy like Samuel as opposed to a day one where I would sign a Luminor on day one just because I don't like the other right tackle options like Owenu, who I think is going to sign for top of the market money.
Oh, yeah, with New England, yeah.
Becton, who I mean, look, my people at Louisville have told me, like, this dude is –
he's like 380 pounds, man.
That might be a understatement. Like, he might be I was told – I think there was a report that came out a couple years ago that was like he was pushing 400.
Yeah.
And I asked some people at Louisville that would know, and they were like, oh, I'm surprised that didn't happen faster. I'm like, what? They're like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, okay, probably.
But when he's right, though, oof.
And then that, you know, that brings in the Bill Callahan factor with all of this, which I am leaving out because I can't look at any of these guys and say, well – you know, Tyron Smith always gets hurt, but Bill Callahan can coach him to where he doesn't get – and there is something to what Bill Callahan's magic may be on these guys.
Yeah, there is, but it's like I said before, is you go into a beautician and you look on the wall and it says, look, I'm a beautician, not a magician. I'm a magician. You know what I mean? And that's really the fact. Yeah, Bill Callahan is a darn good offensive line coach, but he's not a magician. You can't just say, hey, you know, take – Isaiah Wilson and make him into a player. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean? And I just loosely use Isaiah Wilson for comedy purposes, but you get what I'm saying.
Sure. Trent Brown at left tackle is a fascinating option because he does miss games, which I don't necessarily like, but he does play both tackle spots and has a lot of experience. Yeah. But when he signed with the Raiders, TD, after he signed his first big deal, his weight reportedly got up to 400 pounds, and they released him. And I wonder, you know, there's going to be so few left tackles on the market. Some team is going to convince themselves that they can give Trent Brown money, and I just don't. I don't convince myself that I can do that.
This draft is historically deep at the tackle position, okay? And Trevor actually, and I was texted. I texted you a couple names right before Trevor mentioned it, and I love that he mentioned it after I texted to you because it shows we're on the same page. Troy Fautano. He's going to be a guy, like, they move back a couple spots. Like, that's someone you could definitely get. You know what I mean? And there's going to be other options. Like Kingsley Seomatala, who I text you about also, is another one. You know, you look in that second round, I mean, there are guys that they could get. Now, obviously, there's a huge, huge drop-off from Joe Alt and Ola. And let me say this about those two. I used to have them close. Don't even talk to me about that. Joe Alt, as I said before, at least offensive line-wise, he's the most ready. I'll say it. I'll say it again. He's the most ready pro prospect, the most plug-and-play pro prospect. And I know at 6'9", people mention the high pad level, but guess what? He's 6'9". Of course, you're going to have that. You see what I'm saying? But you look, he's the most pro-ready. Not Marvin Harrison Jr., not Malik Neighbors, not – you know, Caleb Williams. Joe Alt is the most pro-ready prospect. Chase, go ahead and cut that up and put it on the air.
Speaking of that, I'm glad you brought that up because I do wonder, Rick Spielman gushes about Joe Alt after the combine and what the Titans have to do. I do wonder what our sense is of what the Titans are going to do at that left tackle spot and with that 7th pick, and we will do that next. Get your questions in for TD. We'll make sure we leave enough time for all of your questions at 615-737-1025. Your free agency questions. Again, we're less than a week away from free agency. It's the TD Power Hour. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Oh, let me tell you about Twice Daily. That's right. I actually went to Twice Daily 2 days ago, had a wrap made for me right there. Oh, my God, the kiosk. It's so easy. Go into Twice Daily, pull up the kiosk, and if you want snacks, they got it. You want wraps, they got it. You want sandwiches, pizzas, whatever, they got it. And they make it for you fresh. Twice Daily has your cravings. So try those new wraps. They've got Italian, ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, and Nashville hot chicken. And of course, they are always made to order with your favorite toppings. You can download the Twice Daily app to order ahead, and they got snacks. That's right. I've told you about the pretzels. They've got salted garlic parmesan, cinnamon, sugar. They make them, again, they make it right there for you. I had a turkey, egg, and cheese bagel the other day at Twice Daily. It was phenomenal. That's right. So get it done at Twice Daily and be like me. Download the Twice Daily app and join the loyalty program to unlock special discount savings and so much more. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. That's Twice Daily, fresh all day.
Joe Alt somehow 6'8", 321, ran a 5.05, which is moving for him. And Debo asked this question, and they were talking about it on the broadcast. Is it confirmed that he's offensive tackle 1? Because he's not my offensive tackle 1.
Well, the only reason I'm saying, again, we're talking about as of today, he completed everything. And Fashanu got hurt, Mims got hurt. So you didn't see that comparison. He is probably may not have the highest ceiling, but the most ready to come in and play day one, and will be a very good left tackle in this league or right tackle, depending on where teams say, completely healthy. So there is not as much projection as I would say is with a Fashanu, a Mims, because Mims was like off the charts, ridiculous in measurables, but he got hurt again.
At 7, I took Joe Alt because he was the other really good offensive tackle. Would you consider Malik Neighbors here?
No, you got to get. If it's going to be Will Levis, then you better get some protection, or he's not going to have a chance.
There you go, Rick Spielman on his podcast, the with the First Pick podcast on CBS, and he's saying, hey, if Alt's there, it doesn't matter if Neighbors is there, or you got to take him to protect. TD is with us. So TD, is it as simple, in my opinion, as that first-round pick at 7, even if they move back, whatever, that first-round pick, wherever it is used, will represent the Tennessee Titans left tackle, yay or nay?
Joe Alt or nobody. That's the way I look at it. I don't know who that guy was on there with Rick Spielman, but, to call Joe Alt the other tackle is just, it's mind-boggling to me. But, yeah, I think Joe Alt is, if he's there, he's the pick above everyone else. And I'm going to also double down on this. I don't believe there's a receiver outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. that the Titans feel, and I'm going to strongly say this, that I don't believe there's a receiver outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. that the Titans feel is a better prospect than Joe Alt, that they would take over Joe Alt.
Fascinating. Okay. So on that front, this is my view, because Dane Brugler had his mock draft in The Athletic where he had the Titans trading out of the 7th pick to Minnesota to pick up a 2nd next year and a 4th this year, but it was with Alt and Fashanu on the board.
I couldn't see that.
I'm like, if you're gonna buy that pick from me with Joe Alt on that board, you have to solve my left tackle problem for me at that moment, and you have to give me next year's one. Go ahead. And
whose mock was this?
Dane Brugler at The Athletic.
Okay. Yeah, I think Dane is just having some fun there, making the draft, the mock, a little more entertaining with a trade. The Titans will not. I'm not going to say what they will not, because we've seen crazy things happen. It's very unlikely that with Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt on the board, it's very unlikely that they trade out of the pick. That would be borderline outside of a crazy deal coming. That would be borderline criminal, and I don't think this staff would do that.
So what do you think the drop-off is if they end up moving back? Because I do think the J.J. McCarthy, and Charles Robinson said it on Robbie and Joe today, that the J.J. McCarthy heat is real, that most people see him as a first-rounder. And there's that whole group right there, 11, 12, 13, that all need quarterbacks, and Atlanta's at 8 behind you. Now, we don't know if they sign Cousins or not, how that affects things.
Right.
But they could move up. Somebody could move up. And at that point, you're out, in my opinion, of the Alt and Fashanu sweepstakes. So what is the drop-off between those two, specifically Fashanu, because we know Alt is number 1, but the drop-off there, and then Fatanu out of Washington, or Fuaga, the right tackle.
Hey.
And could he move over to left? Could Bill Callahan move him the way they moved Tyron Smith when he was in Dallas? Like, what do we think about kind of that second tier of tackle if they were to move, or if both tackles go off the board before they pick?
I love the haircut that Fuaga had, man. A little low on the side with the mullet and everything. I got to talk to him a little bit, and we talked about just like playing with power and having an attitude, and he definitely has that. But he's a guy that, in my opinion, is pure right tackle. So if you're going to draft your right tackle, I mean, he would be a guy that will. The old Titans would be perfect for Fuaga. He would be perfect for that. because of his run. He gets his hands on you. He's moving you out the way. I don't know that he will be as much of a fit here, especially, considering some of the things that they'll probably do in free agency to show up right tackle. Now, if you're looking at second tier, Troy Fautano is the one. Tyler Guyton is intriguing. Tyler Guyton, that is. I watched him over there at the Senior Bowl flip to the left side. He struggled initially. Cedric Johnson from Ole Miss, who had some conversations with the Titans, the edge defender. He got him a couple times, but you saw him start to settle in there. So that's someone else. I tell you another guy nobody's talking about, and that's Roger Rosengarten. And he actually tested well the Washington. He's on the flip side of Fautano, right, the right tackle. But remember, Michael Penix is left-handed, so he was considered the blind side protector there. He tested well. I watched him work as some left tackle in addition to right tackle at the Senior Bowl. So that's another guy a little bit later that you could flip. So there's a bunch of guys. I mean, we've talked about Jordan Morgan, even though he has the short arms. We talked about Patrick Paul, as an option too. So there's a lot, but I think there's a drop-off from Joe Alt to the rest of them. And the thing with Olu Fashanu that's pretty interesting is he doesn't have – so, okay, the presence. Like, you stand in front of Joe Alt and you're like, that's a bodyguard right there. That's somebody I want protecting my $100 million investment. And Fashanu, he doesn't have the same size as Joe Alt, clearly, and he doesn't have the same, aura. It's a little more laid back, a little more relaxed with him. And also, if you want to get into, the metrics, the 8.5-inch hands, that's something else to be concerned about. My hands are 8.5 inches, and, I'm 6 feet, 184. You know what I mean? So it's strange there too.
Do you think that that it is likely that he'll be available at 7?
Who, Olu?
Alt.
It depends on what Jim Harbaugh and the Khakis do, man. What they do with the Chargers, it's the Chargers and Giants. That's going to be the main one, and you just got to kind of hope that somebody either A, moves up to get McCarthy, you know what I mean, which I doubt is going to happen with the, in front of the Titans. So you look, Caleb Williams, it'd be the 3 quarterbacks, Williams, Jaden Daniels, who has now on many boards, a lot of people are finally coming to their senses. He has now risen above Drake May, but that's a different conversation. So you have those 3, and then you have Marvin Harrison Jr., and then at 5 and 6, it's like, okay, is somebody going to get Rome Odunze, or are they going to get one of these tackles? And if they get one of these tackles, are they going to get Olu, or are they going to get Joe Alt? I don't see how anybody takes Olu ahead of Alt, but, that's something that is not my decisions.
So what worries me is I think that 4 is a mystery pick because Mike Sando talked to 6 evaluators, 6, I think, general managers. And to your point, it was 6 of them all agreed Caleb Williams at 1. 5 said Jaden Daniels at 2. 1 said Drake May. The other 5 said Drake May at 3, and then that one said Jaden Daniels. But then at 4, there was, 2 for Joe Alt, 2 for Marvin Harrison Jr., and 2 for Dallas Turner. And that gets me worried that, could Arizona see Joe Alt and like him that much and use it? Could they trade out? Diana Rossini reported that, apparently they are thinking about wanting to trade out of that pick. Could somebody hop in there? Because Alt does seem like the kind of tackle prospect that if you're really eyeing a left tackle for the future, you would want to jump the Titans in order to be able to grab.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got the Jets. You got, the Raiders, but I think the Raiders go quarterback. And the funny thing, I don't know if you saw Alt's combine profile, but I don't agree with the comp, but Lance Zierlein compares him to your guy, Mike McGlinchey.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not good because they put them on the. I think that's scouting the helmet more than it is anything else.
Yeah. No, I don't
Notre
agree.
Dame.
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't. It's tough, man, because I don't think the Jets jumped the Titans to get Alt. I really think. I think there's a good chance he'll be there, honestly.
Is there a debate between Fashanu and Odunze and Neighbors if there is not a debate between Alt and Odunze and Neighbors?
Absolutely a debate between them. Absolutely a debate, and it comes down to what do you want, right? You want that guy that. But here's the thing that's crazy, because if you go back and you watch Washington, they move Odunze all over the formation. Like, they bumped him around. Like, you look at the Oregon games, they moved him around to kind of get him away from Kyrie Jackson at times, the Oregon corner. I think it really comes down to, what do you want, right? Do you want a guy that's probably going to be better outside and making plays down the field a la Rome Odunze, or do you want one of those guys that you could just package stuff for and jet sweeps and smoke routes and motion them into, running a slant and those type of things, and just have them touch the ball and take it to the house and Malik Neighbors? I think that's really what it comes down to, and I'm really curious what Neighbors runs. Like, he shows a lot of speed on the field, but if he goes and he runs, 4.3 at LSU's pro day, if I'm the Titans, I'm clapping aggressively, because I'm like, all right, he's probably going to go to one of those two, and that just increased our opportunity to get a guy like Joe Alt.
But where would Fashanu fit in there? Like, if the Titans, if it comes down to they've got a choice between Neighbors and Alt, you make it sound like you believe that they would take Alt. If it comes down to Fashanu and Neighbors, or Fashanu and Odunze, do they take the left tackle because they need the left tackle, or do they take the receiver?
I think it goes Neighbors, Fashanu, Odunze. That's how I think it goes that way.
TD is with us. To your phones next, 615-737-1025. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 The Game. Stillman and Company, TD Power Hour ahead of free agency. TD, they're loaded for you. Do you have a thought or do you want to go right to them?
Let's go to them.
Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kyle has been waiting patiently and is going to kick us off. Kyle, you're on with TD.
What's going on, TD? Big
What's
fan.
up? Appreciate you.
Yeah. I've been thinking I'd like to trade Traylon Burks for Janarius Sneed, and I see why Jared doesn't want to do it. He'd rather have a second-round pick, but the great advanced scouting Jared said that Traylon Burks could be better than A.J. Brown. What better
I
than
said
Andy
he had
Reid
more talent,
and Patrick
and I am
Mahomes?
now questioning that, but yes.
Patrick Mahomes, what better than them two to get that kind of talent?
Hey,
What do you think?
I like where
Think
you're
that.
going, but I think it's going to require more than just Traylon Burks to do that. They'll probably have to throw in a second or something along those lines, maybe even a first to get Snead. And you look at the deal that Jalen Johnson signed, I think it put him right around 20-something million. So you're also going to have to pony up to pay at least, I would say, Snead going on the market is going to at least be $22 million per. So it's a tough deal to do. I wouldn't do it.
Well, Kyle called yesterday and proposed that same thing, and I was like, they're not going to do that. Like, they're not going to say, oh, okay, we're asking for a second-round pick from everybody else, but we'll take Traylon Burks instead. Like, they're not – I would love to trade Traylon Burks for Legarius Sneed.
I understand where the caller's coming from. I understand where Kyle's coming from because Traylon Burks was just recently a first-round pick, so he looks at value there. And I get that. That makes sense, but I don't think it happens.
Let's go to Tristan, who's up next here on the program. Tristan, you're on with TD.
Oh, hey, and thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I was wondering, like Greg Cosell, like on 104.5 The Zone said, Joe Old wasn't as great as Beyonce, the offensive tackle from Penn State, and like, why don't we draft some of the linemen from Michigan because they're better than J.C. Latham or Wims from Georgia or the offensive tackle from Oklahoma. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Tristan. What do you think of Cosell's take?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're a really good prospect, stuff gets picked apart. Like in the group chat about Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm like, yo, I don't like that he doesn't get enough yak. But it's like, it's nitpicking. There's going to be areas of there's no perfect prospect. So obviously there's things that you could pick apart about Joe Alt. The late punching and those types of things, I don't know that that's that much of an issue because I don't mind the late punching. And you look, he has the extended arms to where he can make up for that anyway. So I don't think Joe Alt is a big problem as far as like some of the things that Greg Cosell points out. No disrespect to Greg Cosell because he does an awesome job. I just don't think that those things that he pointed out are as high magnitude. Michigan has some good offensive linemen, but I'll remain steadfast that Joe Alt is the best offensive lineman in this draft.
I mean, again, we just played the cut of Rick Spielman, who is the guy who his last draft pick was Justin Jefferson. And, like, he is sitting there just gushing over Joe Alt. Like, that's, I mean, look, I don't know exactly what Cosell said or didn't say about Alt. The sense I get
it was
is
Jared,
Alt
it
is
it
the
was
guy.
small things that, again, like you could look at any prospect and point stuff out. You know what I mean? And I think that's all Greg was doing. I don't think he was necessarily trying to knock Alt as a prospect. He's trying to give you balance, right, and present the areas for improvement.
So I'll ask you this question. Floyd used to tell me that they would grade guys on a scale of like 1 to 10, but nobody ever got a 10. So 7 is kind of like the elite of the elite prospects. He was like Eddie George was a 7. And that's the kind of guy that he would say. Let's say, using that, what would you give Alt as a grade if 7 is elite? And what would you give Fashanu, like 6.5, 6.6, 6 point, like the difference between the two?
I'm going 7, 7.5 for Alt, 6 for Fashion.
So you really think there's a huge gap between them?
I'm not going to say a huge gap, but I just think right now I think there's a gap. I think with Alt, you know what you're getting. And it's, people have compared him to Jake Matthews. They've compared him to Joe Thomas. You know what you're getting. Like this dude, you just give him, man, take this 76. Man, I need you to protect Will Levis for the next 10 years, please. handle your business. And I think that's what you do with Alt.
Let's go to Mike, who's up next here. Mike, you're on with TD.
Thanks, guys. So, TD, I don't think, and again, like you said, they've been very tight-lipped about things, but I assume we're not going to be in the market for Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs. But do you think Tajay Spears is ready to take over the helm of the number one back role, or, again, increasing his touch load by, let's just say, hypothetically, 10 to 15 touches a game? Or are we looking at signing maybe I wouldn't say like the cream of the crop running back, but like maybe like one of those like veteran running backs that are probably like 4, 5, 6 on that free agent board. Again, assuming that Henry is not coming back. Again, I would.
Yep, Mike.
Right price,
Mike. Thank you for your call.
That's a great question, Mike. And I've thought about that, and that's what landed me on Gus Edwards. I think you look at him, a short yardage back, a guy that can get those, touchdowns in the low red zone when you need them. So that's the direction. Tajay Spears is interesting. And, look, man, you're not going to find too many that like Tajay more than me. But I think this, at least part of this year, like they have to ramp him up into that primary workhorse type of back. But don't be surprised if they draft somebody, too. You look at a guy like Braylon Allen, who at the Combine, I asked him about Derrick Henry, and he told me they have a personal relationship, actually, because of the size. Now, obviously, different builds, but, that's another guy. You look at Ray Davis. You look at Jalen Wright. You saw what he ran, and to get a home run hitter that doesn't need to get a lot of carries to have impact, I think, that's where Wright would be really good, too.
I think Spears is ready for 1A, and they just need a 1B.
Yeah.
Let's go to Kinston, who's up next. Kinston, you're on with TD.
What's going on, fellas?
Yo.
Question, TD, about Keon Coleman and comparing him to somebody like Jerry Rice's son, Brendan Rice, right? I looked at him and I noticed they got similar builds, right? But Rice ran like a 4.5 flat, and Keon, ran a 4.6. But then if you look at Rice's film, I always say go by the film, he's nowhere near explosive as Keon Coleman. So eager to see, like, what do you think about, like, the game, the tape versus the time, speed, and, like, what's up with Keon Coleman?
You always – and see, that's why I fool with Kinston, because he watches tape. That's why I like Kinston. Now, here's the thing. That 40 is good. Like, it's a good measure, but it's a small – you're not paying him to run the 40. You're paying him to play football, right? And Keon Coleman, when he plays football, he does that productively. And then also, if you want to look at the measurements, right, within that 40, Keon Coleman hit 22 miles an hour. So he's not slow. He just doesn't have that long, sustained speed. He's got speed. And you look at the gauntlet, he ran through that, and, he ran the fastest time out of anybody over the last 2 to 3 years. You know who had the fastest time before him, right, Jared?
Who?
Puka Nacua. Yeah. So Keon Coleman did that faster than Puka did, and we know what Puka did this past year productively, with the Rams. So I think when you look at Keon Coleman, he's a guy that isn't a speed aspect, but he is someone as you begin to, and this is something, talking to David Robinson, his wide receiver coach, who has coached Des Bryant, Antonio Brown, among others, they're working to get him to use his basketball skills and translate that into football, specifically on contested catches. It's just like with DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins played basketball first year at Clemson, you know what I mean? And I told DeAndre Hopkins, and he laughed when I said it, but I said, you're the Dennis Rodman of wide receivers, because you, from having that background, that basketball background, and being a good rebounder, you have a knack for knowing where the ball is going to be and knowing how to get yourself in position to get it. And that's something that Keon Coleman has to continue to work on and acclimate to his game.
Cedric is up next. Cedric, you're on with TD. Quickly. Go ahead, Cedric.
Well, what's good, TD? Hey, listen, man. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell Joe Alt is going to be there at 7. Trade back Titans, Xavier Legette, and, man, you talked about this. The sleeper of the draft is going to be Jermaine Burton. Nobody's talking about that dude. He will be St. Brown, man. Trust me. I'm out.
Cedric, who's going to be your left tackle?
Yeah. No, I like what Cedric is saying. Look, if Joe Alt is gone, I would definitely look to trade back, right? But you could trade back, and that's where some of the guys we mentioned, Fautano, Mims, who played left and right. So there's options there if they trade back, but ideally Alt is there. I don't think there's a no snowballs chance type of outlook, but it doesn't look overly promising because he's such a good prospect.
I think the Titans are going to use that first-round pick, whether it comes at 7 or 11 or 26. They will use that first-round pick on a left tackle.
Yeah.
I don't know who, but they will use it on a left tackle.
If it's not Olu and it's not Alt, I don't think they're doing it. I don't think they're going to funnel a Fautano into that, or and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name. The Samoan names always get me, but regardless, I don't think that outside of Fashanu or Alt, I don't think they use it at 7.
What about later, though, like trading back?
Later, definitely possible, because now you're getting into some of the guys we mentioned.
They're not going to have 2 first-round picks in this year's draft because I think only Cleveland or only Arizona. I think only Arizona has 2 first-round picks this year.
In Chicago,
that's right. Yeah, they have 1 and 9. So I don't think they're going to be able to get 2 first-round picks in this year's draft, and I think that first-round pick is going to be used whenever it's used on the guy that will be playing left tackle for the Titans.
We shall see. I don't think they're going to force it in. I don't think so, but we'll see.
TD, tell us about ESPN Bet.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. ESPN Bet is the official sports book of ESPN. It's now live in Tennessee. And if you play ESPN Bet, you get $100 in bonus bets as a new user. It's the only place where you can find the daily exclusives and the offers with your favorite ESPN personalities and shows. You find all your favorite markets, bets like in-game wagering, cross-sport parlays, teasers, and all the props you can handle. That's ESPN Bet. Download today. What a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For a problem gambling support, call or text TN Redline 800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. See the app for details.
TD, great stuff. Appreciate you.
Deuces.
Coming up next, Tennessee basketball. They're SEC champs. They looked the part of a national title contender, but I have a take that I think will be good in the long run for Tennessee, but it would break Vols fans' hearts in the short term. I'll explain. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live in the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Bridgestone Arena tonight, where the Predators take on the Buffalo Sabres at 6 o'clock. How about them Vols last night? On the road at South Carolina. It was South Carolina's Super Bowl, and Tennessee never trailed. An SEC heavyweight. I mean, this was a punch-for-punch fight, and the Vols never trailed. And the Vols are now SEC basketball champions. And I got to tell you what the most incredible thing about this incredible season, led by the white Michael Jordan, Dalton Connect, what the most incredible thing about this incredibly entertaining, fun, good, team-filled basketball team is, Ian.
What's that?
They have become the measuring stick in the SEC. So, normally it's traditionally been Kentucky, but this year, when Tennessee goes on the road and they play a good SEC team, it is that game is clearly circled. They went to Lexington. That was a big game for UK, knowing that UT was coming, and Tennessee beat them. They went to Alabama on Saturday. That was a big game, and Alabama knew it, and they had Nick Saban in the house, and they had Justin Thomas in the house, and, Alabama never loses at home in the SEC, and they beat them. And last night, that atmosphere at South Carolina, I mean, that was big-time college basketball. That's what we miss here with Vanderbilt being so bad. That Vanderbilt-Tennessee game from 2008 stands out. But, that was a big-time home court advantage, and the Vols won again. They're SEC champions. I've got nothing bad to say about them. I love their defense. I think they rebound the ball. I think, again, Connect, he's awesome. Zakai Ziegler, great with the ball in his hands. I love this team. Everybody's got a role. Everybody knows it. Everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction. Joe Lunardi now has them as a number one seed for all you Tennessee fans every year that scream and yell about how it's unfair that Joe Lunardi doesn't treat your team right. Lunardi's got you as the number one seed now. You cannot be unhappy with Lunardi. But I have a hot take. And my hot take is, I think, as great as this season has been, and I've told you, they are legitimate national championship contenders. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I know what a championship basketball team looks like. Now, I can't tell you that they're better than UConn or Arizona or Houston or any of those teams, Purdue, because I haven't watched them. So I'm not going to pretend to tell you, they would be better than this team or they'd be better than I can't tell you that. But my hot take is, now that they've won the SEC, now that they're probably going to be a one seed, now that they're probably going to beat Kentucky this weekend because they're playing at home, I think Tennessee needs to lose in the SEC tournament. Probably on Saturday or Sunday. And the reason why, and I would prefer Saturday to get that extra day of rest, but the committee, they don't care about the SEC tournament. We've seen this time and time again where Tennessee wins the SEC tournament and the committee doesn't adjust anything based upon that. So they do not care about the SEC tournament. If Tennessee is a one seed entering the SEC tournament, they will be a one seed going into the tournament. And again, what's the difference between the top one seed and the worst two seed? I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I think they need to lose in the SEC tournament. And here's why. Because I've seen far too often these teams that get hot, that realize they're really good, that win these big, emotional, hard-fought games, and all of a sudden they start to think their farts don't smell. And if Tennessee keeps running through the SEC, which has great teams, South Carolina last night, that's a good basketball team. Kentucky, that's a good team. Alabama, that's a good team. Now, Alabama's not the Alabama team they were last year, but they're still a good team. And if Tennessee runs through them again, Auburn, if they run through them here, if they run through them at Bridgestone Arena, there is I'm not going to say a good chance Tennessee will fall flat because I think this is a good Tennessee team. But I think they need the reality check. I remember when Vanderbilt beat Kentucky in 2012. Remember Kevin Stallings had the rolled up towel and he was crying into it after it was over? And a little part of me was crying too because that meant that Stallings was going to stay the coach for a while. But when Vanderbilt beat Kentucky that year, Cal came out right after the game and he said, "This is the best thing that ever happened to us. This is the best thing that ever happened." And while I think that that was just convenience for John Calipari to say that, I also think that there may be some truth to that. That Anthony Davis Kentucky team looked in the mirror and said, we cannot think that we are destined for a championship. We're going to have to earn it on the court. And we can get beat by a team that's not as good as us, because that Vanderbilt team was not as good as that Kentucky team. And so I think that Tennessee, if I was Rick Barnes and I was coaching them, what I would do on Saturday, after you win at 11 o'clock on Friday, on Saturday, what I would do is I would maybe play Dalton Connect a little less in the first half if I had to, and probably wouldn't put the scout together as far as, I probably wouldn't change the scouting report, probably be the same scouting report. Whoever it is we played, probably be the same scouting report. Would tell the assistant coaches, hey, we're not implementing anything. We're not going over in practice. We're not game planning. We're not. Just see what, I'm not going to try to lose the game on purpose, but I'm not going to try to win the game. And the only reason I say this is because, again, I think Tennessee, I don't think Tennessee has to lose in the SEC tournament to win the national title, but I don't think it would hurt. I remember that Christmas Day game football, San Francisco versus Baltimore, when San Francisco just got the crap kicked out of them by Baltimore. And I remember watching that game and saying, because it was so lopsided, I was like, this could turn into a bad thing for the Ravens. Because they just beat San Francisco on the road at San Francisco. They crushed them. They turned over Brock Purdy 4 times. They embarrassed them on national TV. And now they walk out of that as the overwhelming Super Bowl favorites, period. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And for San Francisco, I actually thought that was a good thing. Because for San Francisco, that meant, hey, we need to look in the mirror on this. You know, everybody's telling us that we're destined to go right back to the Super Bowl and that we're incredible and that Brock Purdy's the MVP and that McCaffrey might be the MVP and that he's the man and he's the man and he's the man. You might need that look in the mirror. And I'm not saying that's why Kansas City beat the Ravens. But I am saying that I've just seen this when a team is so good and a team, like, they know they're good. They know that they are capable of winning the national championship at UT. I think a loss would benefit them more than winning the SEC would. I really do. And it kind of stinks because, you know, last night Dalton Connect had the SEC champions hat on, and I don't have a problem with celebrating a regular season conference championship because I think it's harder, it's a bigger accomplishment to win the conference championship in the regular season than it is to win the tournament championship, but the tournament championship has more weight because more people watch it and because it comes with the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. But you don't need that. I think Tennessee would be better off with a loss, and it would pain all those Vol fans that are going to come in droves for the SEC tournament next week. It would kill them. But I think it might be best case scenario for Tennessee, best case for Rick Barnes, is to lose on Saturday or to lose on Sunday in a tough game, but lose, and then kind of reset and refocus for the NCAA tournament. And no, after you beat Scarbini Tech in the first round, that you can lose in the second round, you can lose in the Sweet 16 before it gets to the Elite Eight or the Final Four or something like that. But this Tennessee team, they've got it all. I said yesterday my thoughts on Marvin Harrison Jr., that I think that he's good, but I don't think he's all that in a bag of chips. Let me say this. I think this Vols basketball team, I think they are all that in a bag of chips. This team they got it, and I've seen it. Because I used to work in Louisville, the #1 college basketball market in America, so I know what it looks like on the basketball court. and UT's got it. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll get to your phones on Vol basketball. I wanted to make sure today, even with the free agency coming up and the trade deadline in hockey and everything, I wanted to carve out time to make sure that we talked about Vol basketball because that game last night was awesome. That was a big in the chest moment for UT last night. But I think a loss could help in the SEC tournament. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 The Game.
Tennessee is going to walk out of here with an SEC regular season title, they will be a 1 seed in the projected brackets starting tomorrow morning.
Three's off the mark. The follow slam means nothing. It won't count anyway. And the Tennessee Volunteers have wrapped up an SEC outright regular season title. Connect will get a ring, but they think there is much more in store for this veteran team that now has a go-to scorer.
Without a doubt. And South Carolina, to me, is Sweet 16 good as well. They just got beat by a better club tonight. And the maturity of this team, but I said it in the second half, Tom, Tennessee last year in the NCAA tournament did not have Zakai Ziegler. They did not have Dalton Connect. Arguably your two best players playing at a high level make this Tennessee team a real threat in that NCAA tournament.
Okay. Everybody's telling you, Tennessee fans, this team is legit. And Ian, I think Tennessee fans are afraid to get emotionally 100% invested.
They're cautiously optimistic.
So I told Brian Billick when I saw him at the Super Bowl and I put him on the midday show with Derek and they, talked about the old days with the Ravens and whatnot. I told Brian Billick, this wasn't a joke, by the way. When I told him, I was like, my first heartbreak in life, my first true
Yeah, did you tell him
heart.
that it's like, hey, you kind of made me cry?
I mean, didn't kind of make me cry. Like, it was my first true heartbreak in life when the 2000 Titans lost to the Ravens. They were 13-3. The Titans had lost the year before the Super Bowl by a yard. And the next year they were the best team in the NFL, and it was like it was their destiny to win that Super Bowl to make up for the year before. And the only team that competed with that Titans team, that was in the same league as that Titans team, was that Ravens team. And it broke my heart. The first true heartbreak I've ever had was that. And I think Tennessee fans have had their hearts broken so many times that they are afraid that when Jimmy Dykes just waxes poetically there about, I'll tell you what, this team is riding first class on the jet. I believe they are the best. I believe that they've got Dalton Connect and Zakai Ziegler, and you can expect them when they get into that Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. And Tennessee fans are like, yo, man, I've watched Rick Barnes long enough, folks. I'm worried about it. And Ian sent me a text yesterday. And Ian said, last night after the game, I like Rick Barnes fine, but I think I'm now rooting for a first weekend loss just for the fan meltdown. And I got to say this. I think Tennessee fans are expecting it, Ian, more than it would be a total meltdown. If Tennessee gets a 1 seed and they lose to a 9 seed or an 8 seed, and it happens every year. Alabama was a 1 seed last year, and they lost the second round of the tournament. It happens every year, it feels like. I don't think Tennessee fans would be that surprised. Just because of how guarded they have been. But then I asked Ian if I was allowed to celebrate in the misery, which over the years I have not had a problem of enjoying with Tennessee fans when things don't go their way. But I've been high on this team. I'm not going to lie. I've been high. I've been, you know me, especially when it comes to Rick Barnes.
Well, you're not the only one that kind of feels like this team might be a little different.
Well, it's also because, to me, when I talk about this Tennessee basketball team, my emotions are removed from it. I'm not a Tennessee fan. So when you guys, get all bent out of shape about a team that I'm like, yeah, okay, they're fine, but they ain't all that, then I tell you, you get mad. This team, I'm telling you, that team is legit. Just like that 2000 Titans team, I know they didn't win the Super Bowl. They were every bit a Super Bowl team. But I do think that Tennessee fans are afraid to get excited. I think they're afraid to.
Well, they were excited last night.
They were.
And it, maybe that's why I was a little bit, ready, a little bit over it. But, You
will take in joy if Tennessee loses because their fans will go crazy.
I'm not sure if I'll take in joy, but.
Oh, stop it. Yes, you will.
I'm not sure I'll be like, oh, this is so great that they lost. I will just, like I don't know, what do you call it? the collateral damage, I suppose.
I will say this. If Tennessee loses in the first weekend, I won't know what to say at that. Like, as much as I've crapped on Rick Barnes, like when it comes to winning NCAA tournament games, I will feel bad. Like, it will hurt me. And I'm not a UT fan. You all know that. It will hurt me if they lose in the first weekend. Because this is a special team now. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHoney.com. Chris texts in and says, you are smoking some of the good stuff again. And again, I said in the last segment, I think a loss in the SEC tournament would be good for Tennessee. I'm not saying they should try to lose. I'm just saying Rick Barnes, if I was coaching, I wouldn't pull out all the stops to make sure that we don't. Chris says, you're smoking some of the good stuff. Now Tennessee will win the tournament, and you'll roll in on Monday saying, I told you they needed to win the tournament. I see the flip-flop coming. Chris says, shock jock, man, you throw some craziness out there. First of all, we have a rule on the show, nobody gets in trouble for something they haven't done. I have not done that. I have not done a 180 on my Tennessee should lose or Tennessee, it would be good if they lost in the SEC tournament. I have not done that yet, so don't get me in trouble for it. Secondly, I am being totally honest, and I am trying to be as self-aware as possible when I say this. Have I ever had a really, really strong take, like guaranteed that something would happen, or, really, beat a topic into the ground, an opinion, and then completely denied having the opinion? Has that ever happened on this show?
I don't know.
Like, it's not like I didn't say that the Chicago Blackhawks in 2017 would blast the Predators. I said they would in 5 games. Mm-hmm. I said that series is over. Mm-hmm. They're going to beat you at 1-2 in Chicago. You'll win game 3, and then they'll beat you in game 4, and they'll smoke you in game 5. I said it. It happened, or it didn't happen, but I said it, and it happened, and I admit that I said it. I'm trying to think, like, when did I ever... Today, Willie accused me of not liking Gus Nyquist when they signed him, and I'm like, I have no recollection of that happening.
Arthur Smith.
No. What are you talking about with Arthur?
OC? Did you have an opinion on Arthur Smith?
No. If you remember, they played Carolina, and Derrick Henry got 2 touches in the first half. And this was when they were, I think, like 5-5 or 5-6 before they ended up 9-7 and then made the run to the AFC title game. And Derrick Henry got 2 touches in the first half. And the fans were furious with Arthur Smith. I mean, they went crazy. And Floyd defended Arthur. Mm-hmm. And I said, I have no opinion on this. And I let the callers argue with Floyd about Arthur Smith while I stayed out of it. And I was on record of staying out of it. Mm-hmm. And then a couple weeks later, when Arthur was rolling and Tannehill was putting up Joe Montana numbers, Floyd was like, and you were the one that was sitting there crapping on Arthur. And I'm like, no, I was not. No, I stayed out of it because I was like, I do not have an opinion on whether or not he's a good OC or a bad OC. So I have never, ever been like, hey, I think this guy sucks. And then that guy ends up not sucking, and me not saying that I thought that the A.J. Brown trade was a good trade. I said it. It happened. So when the guy's like, oh, you'll say that they needed to win the tournament, I didn't say that. I'm not saying that. I'm telling you, I think a loss for Tennessee would be a good thing because it allows them again to reset. And winning the conference tournament doesn't mean anything anymore unless you're trying to get the automatic bid. It just doesn't matter. The committee never takes this stuff into account. You know, I guess it would matter if you were a team that, like if Kentucky wins the SEC tournament, that would matter to them because they do have a really talented team. So there could be an argument with with Kentucky, that like, no, now we believe we can do it. But other than that, Tennessee doesn't need that. Tennessee knows they can do it. You know they can do it. I know they can do it. They know they can do it. Texter said you wanted the Preds to tank, and now you're their biggest cheerleader. Again, I said embrace the tank as in a suck it up and accept that it's going to happen because it didn't look good. Not I want them to lose every game. That's not the same thing. They went out on that road trip. They came back, got beat by Arizona and some other team that sucks, Anaheim. And I was like, all right, folks, we asked for it. We asked for their rebuild, so we need to embrace this because it looks like it's going to be painful. Mark says Rick Barnes coaches differently in the NCAA tournament. He gets paid championship money, Sweet 16, and he's out, cannot win the big game. I mean, I don't think that Rick Barnes is getting fired. I mean, I would say that pretty certain he's not, and I think he's the perfect coach for that school. I truly believe so. More of your phones. 615-737-1025. Again, Vol basketball, SEC championship. On to the tournaments they go. Lenardi has them as a 1. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
honestly, when I was walking back, just for the guys. I mean, I just know how hard these guys have worked and putting up with me every day, and especially Joe and Santi for 5 years, and which hadn't always been good. And I think they both say there's times they probably hated me, but the fact is there is a special bond with this group of guys. Mary Carter said to me before the game, she said, you know, Coach, this team of guys, they really love each other. And I was thinking about some of those things.
Tennessee's got all the juice, man. Like, this is, I know championship basketball. I've been around it. I've been around teams that have championship caliber players that have lost. And I know, like, where it comes from. Like, when I was in college, that Louisville team in 2009 was the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They lost to Michigan State in the Elite Eight. And I had one of the players on that team tell me, dude, we just beat Arizona by too much in the Sweet 16. And we just thought our farts didn't smell, and that was a problem. That's why I'm saying, like, a loss for Tennessee in the SEC tournament wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. And I say this because I know that this Tennessee team, like, they've got the juice. Like, they've got everything you need to be to be successful in March. They play great defense. They rebound the ball. They've got a great on-ball defender in Jemai Meshack. They can shoot the basketball. They can rebound it. Everybody's got a role. They're 8 deep at least. They are experienced. And they've got the superstar who can take over any game, and every night he's the best player on the floor. So the text line has turned into all these people that are talking about, well, you flip-flopped on this or you flopped on that. Some of you people, I don't even know where you come up with some of this stuff. Texter says, in my opinion, you flip-flop on the cap being fake. Ian, do I ever flip-flop on that?
I don't think so.
I never flip-flop on it. I think the cap is ridiculous.
I don't know. Last flip-flop, I mean, I don't know. Did you consider Mariota a flip-flop?
No, I mean, I've said that, like, I was wrong. That what the flip-flop is the idea of me saying, I think Mariota's going to be a franchise quarterback. They need to do everything they can for Mariota. And then to say, I knew Mariota was no good. Like Robbie Stanley can say, I knew Mariota was no good because he was saying it from the beginning.
Yeah.
I can't say that because I believed in Mariota. I thought Mariota was going to be. There's the difference between being wrong and then lying about what you've said previously.
Okay, I see that.
And I don't do that. So, like, the idea of, oh, Jared, you flip-flop on the cap being fake, when? I mean, I thought two years ago, I thought the cap was real. I did.
I do think there's a difference between being wrong and flip-flopping, yeah.
Agreed. Like, I thought the A.J. Brown trade, I got it. I was for it when it happened.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has some cold takes here and there.
So, I mean, it is what it is. One texter into the text line says, I'm a UK basketball fan, and I could care less about the SEC tournament. I just want them to look good. Well, let me say this when it comes to Kentucky. And Kentucky's in a different spot than Tennessee. Tennessee knows they're a national title contender. They know it. They know they're a heavyweight. UK thinks they're a heavyweight. Like, they're starting to turn it around. They've lost one game in like the last 3.5 weeks, and it was by 1 point to LSU. Like, they know they're legit, but how legit, they don't know. And so if you're Kentucky and you go into the SEC basketball tournament and you rip off 3 wins in a row against South Carolina, Auburn, and Tennessee, now you know you're legit. And for a young team, I think that confidence is pretty important. I think this is a huge NCAA tournament for Cal. Like, I think when it comes to Cal, this is, like last year they got knocked out, I think, in the second round. They haven't been to the Sweet 16 in forever. They haven't been to the Final Four in almost 9 years. Like, Cal is making a lot of money, and they can't fire him yet, but it might be coming. One texter says, you used to always say Jeremy Lazon sucks, but now he doesn't. The last segment of yesterday's show, I was like, I think I may have to pull back on that a little bit, but I'm never not going to tell you that I didn't go berserker when they traded a second-round pick for him, and I still think that was a bad decision, by the way. I mean, I still think that, like, that was a bad decision. But, again, it's like everybody wants you to – it's like Skip Bayless, right? I don't know what Skip Bayless's takes on LeBron were before LeBron won a championship, but I'm sure his takes were like, LeBron will never win a title. And every time anything happens with LeBron, he finds some reason to poo-poo on LeBron. The other day, LeBron scored 40,000 points. And Skip Bayless was on Twitter, and he was like, I know LeBron scored 40,000 points, but he's never even scored the biggest points of his own career or something like that. I mean, it was ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you, hey, I don't think this guy's very good. League MVP. I still don't think he's I'm not going to do that. Whatever happens, it happens. I'm not going to just deny reality. But I'm not going to go back and tell you what I thought. Texter said, you only thought the A.J. Brown trade was good because John Robinson did it, and he has sacred cow status with you. I thought the A.J. Brown trade was good when it happened because I thought Burks was going to be A.J. Brown. And I thought at the same time that the Titans, and this was when the Titans were coming off having the number 1 seed using 90 people, I thought the Titans had fully adopted the Patriot way and that the Patriot way actually worked. I mean, I truly believe that. And the Patriot way is cut Lawyer Malloy and put Rodney Harrison in there. And that did not work here. The personality clash with AJ, that did not work here. I will say this, though. In fairness to the Titans, as bad as that trade's been for them, AJ, it does seem like, is starting to tear apart the Eagles. Caroline said on the show, I must have missed this. Where the hell was I? AJ called into a local station in Philadelphia?
I didn't hear that.
I heard them talking about it. Like, AJ picked up the phone and called into a local Philadelphia station. I'm like, how did I miss that?
I didn't see that, no.
How could the two of us miss this if it happened?
I don't know.
Hold on, I'm going to Google it. A.J. Brown calls local Philly station. Let's see what comes up. 2 weeks ago, A.J. Brown calls Philly sports radio and gets it. Oh, boy. How did we miss that?
2 weeks ago.
According to Pro Fan Talk. 2 weeks ago, A.J. Brown calls into 94 WIP to clear the air about the Eagles. Mike Florio. Eagles A.J. Brown calling into WIP was pure class. WIP. We respect A.J. Brown for calling 94 WIP. Now I feel kind of left out.
Sounds a little uneventful, though, but good for AJ.
But now I feel left out.
In what way?
AJ used to watch our show on Twitter every day.
Oh, that he never called us?
Yes.
Well,
like at the Super Bowl, I asked AJ, I was like, how's it feel that the Titans didn't even make the playoffs and you're here? And AJ laughed, said he had no comment. And he was like, but I expected that from you. It's like, Speaking of the Titans, Diana Rossini, holy crap. TD showed this to me. We got to play it for you next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
What is your sense of why Vrabel doesn't have a head coaching job right now?
I don't think that there was a fit for him. I don't think he sat in front of any owner who thought that his style was going to work for what they were looking for. Do you know I had a GM at the Senior Bowl who mentioned to me Vrabel's physical build, that he's a very large human being and can be very intimidating to people in an organization that are going to be part of these decisions. And that is a factor, which I laughed. I said, stop, that's not something that's real. Who cares what someone physically looks like? And he said, I'm just telling you, I've been in rooms and somebody's physical presence can make a difference. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Outside of football, it has an effect, right? They always say really tall men have better opportunities.
There you go. That was Diana Rossini on the Athletic Football Show at the Super Bowl. Everybody heard it, that Mike Vrabel's too big, too intimidating to be a head coach. Which, when I heard that, I was at the Super Bowl, and I'm like, I think that's bullcrap. I don't know if a GM really told Diana that. I don't think they did. Well, Diana sat down with the boys from Pardon My Take, and they asked if anyone had ever gotten mad about a report. Here is what Diana had to say.
Has there been a player or coach who's gotten mad at you for a specific story?
Yeah, Mike Vrabel.
Oh.
He called me the day after an aggregator took something I said that basically said Mike Vrabel's too fat to work.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that was a good story.
So that was
you didn't say too fat. You said he's a large person. He is.
What I shared on the football podcast on The Athletic was that I had dinner with a GM at the Senior Bowl, and we had conversations about how bizarre this last coaching cycle was and how crazy it was that Belichick and Vrabel didn't have gigs. And I said, why do you think that Mike didn't get a job? He said, I think they needed a change there in Tennessee, but in terms of the next opportunity, I think there's a lot of people who are very intimidated by him. He walks into a room and he's confident, and he's physically a big human being.
Yeah.
And it's a little startling at first. Very normal, right? When I say this to you, right?
These are all facts, by the way, and we love Coach Vrabel, and he is, that's what I'd want out of my football coach.
Correct. His hands are the size of your head, right?
He hit me on the back at the combine a few years ago, and I almost coughed up a lung.
So when the aggregators took that and changed all of this, the way I said it, so that wasn't great to hear from a not too happy head coach to begin, well, former head coach now. He didn't call me after the piece we did on why he got fired, but the piece on him calling him a little fat, he wasn't too happy.
Okay, so Vrabel got mad that Diana Rossini called him fat, even though she didn't call him fat. My favorite part about this is Diana blaming the aggregator. Hey, it's not my fault that the aggregator said that. And I don't even know who the aggregator is. The Athletic put a tweet out with that statement. Aggregator? What are we talking about? The aggregator has become the new my phone was hacked, right? Oh, no, I didn't say that on Twitter. My Twitter was hacked. Oh, no. I didn't. The aggregator said that. First of all, Vrabel is a big dude, and that is nothing new. Everybody knows that. Now, I do see why I think Vrabel got mad about that because it was stupid, not because it was calling him fat. But I love it. My favorite part about this is that as soon as Diana said that, and she said it, that was her voice that said, I talked to a GM at the Senior Bowl, and the GM told me that, Mike Vrabel, he's so big, he's so intimidating when he walks into a room, and he's so, well, I'll just leave it at that. And so she says all those things. Then it becomes a big deal. Then she walks it back. And now she's blaming the aggregator. Just go ahead and say it, Diana. Just go ahead and say it's okay. You can say right now that Mike Vrabel's my source. And Mike Vrabel, because this is what I think is true. Mike Vrabel's my source. And I was making an excuse as to why Vrabel hadn't gotten hired, because the real reason that he coaches defense and that he's kind of an a-hole makes it sound bad, so let me come up with this fake reason, because that's what I think happened. The Titans, by the way, have announced that they've agreed on a contract extension with long snapper Morgan Cox. So the way the Titans send out these emails is they have a subject with the email that says Titans transaction, March 7th. Ian, when I clicked it, you know what I
for
thought?
the Andre Dillard.
I thought I was getting Andre Dillard's been cut.
Nah, a little bit of a buzzkill, but one less need.
I'm starting to wonder if they're actually going to try to make this Andre Dillard thing happen.
Big coach.
No.
Big coach.
He's got to go. He's got to go. He's got to go. What I would love is if they keep Dillard on this team, like if they keep Andre Dillard on this football team, and he plays next year, which I don't think will happen. But if it does, I don't want to hear any, there was Mike Vrabel that made them play Andre Dillard. Because they got the choice now to get rid of Andre Dillard. So I'm waiting. 615-737-1025. Chad Withrow joins us next from Outkick. He's going to move up just because Barry Trotz is going to join us tomorrow, and we don't know what time that'll be. After the trade deadline, Barry will join us 1025-1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Bridgestone Arena tonight, where the Predators wrap up their homestand against the Buffalo Sabres. 9-game point streak pregame in less than an hour. But because tomorrow we will also be live ahead of the trade deadline, Barry Trotz will join us on the program tomorrow. Chad Withrow from Outkick has been kind enough to move up to Thursday. So Chad Withrow joins us on the program. Chad, this time next week, Tennessee fans will be packing this building here at Bridgestone Arena as the Vols are now the SEC champions after the win last night. I believe the Vols are national title contenders. I believe, as much as you know, I like to crap on Rick Barnes, especially this time of the year. This team is different. Your thoughts on your basketball team after last night's win at South Carolina?
Yeah, I'm with you, Jared. I think this team is different. That doesn't mean they're not going to screw up. You know, the NCAA tournament is a fickle beast, and they could get a matchup against Michigan State as an 8 seed or Texas as a 9 seed in round 2, because I do think they're going to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament now with that win last night, and then lose the game where they have an off shooting night or they're too heavily reliant upon Dalton Connect in the game. So a lot of different things can happen, but they have the makeup to win it all, to cut down the nets in Phoenix for the Final Four. And that's the goal of this team. Anything less than an Elite 8 is definitely going to feel like disappointment. And I would argue this is a Final Four or bust type team, given the veterans, given that Rick Barnes has done everything at Tennessee but advanced really deep into the NCAA tournament. He's made some Sweet 16s, but getting to that Elite 8, getting to a Final Four is the next step. I can't think of another coach that's had Rick Barnes' level of regular season success mixed postseason success. I think Matt Painter is probably the closest comp right now at Purdue. Matt Painter, I think I looked it up yesterday, is 17-15 all time in the NCAA tournament. I think Rick Barnes is 27-25 or 28-26, and Rick Barnes is 16 years older. Barnes is 69 and Painter is 53. So that's probably the closest comparison right now. I look at both Purdue and Tennessee and think it's now is the time for both those coaches to go on a deep run, get to a Final Four, possibly win a national championship. And there's no better team to root for than this group of Tennessee Vols and Rick Barnes at 69 years old, possibly getting to his second ever Final Four, maybe winning his first ever national championship. It really is an incredible story. And look, I'm rooting for them. I'm a Tennessee guy, but I think it's a great story of Rick Barnes, just nationally for everyone. If what he stands for and what he's done in his career can finally break through and do something in the NCAA tournament, get to a Final Four, and possibly win a national title, I think it's a terrific story nationally.
Yeah, I mean, Ian even said yesterday, we were chatting yesterday, and Ian said after the game, you know, if Tennessee doesn't win this, Vol fans, like the level of misery for this is going to be probably 10 times higher than it's been in the previous years for the disappointments. And that I don't even think I'll be able to enjoy it, because I do like watching this team play. I do root for this team. Like, this is a fun Tennessee basketball team to watch. Here's my other thought, though. You know, Tennessee at Thompson Bowling Arena, they could beat anybody. But Tennessee has now become, in the SEC, the team that the other fan bases are circling on the calendar. You can see it in the atmosphere when they go on the road to Kentucky, Alabama, South Carolina. I mean, that is what Kentucky used to be. Or what I'm sure, like, you know, the Joakim Noah and Al Horford Florida Gator team, the second year after they had won that first title. I'm sure every SEC team, when they saw that defending title with all those players were coming to town, it was their Super Bowl. That is what this Tennessee team has become. And in every instance, they've gone on the road and they've won. What do you make of that?
And they've kind of done it twice with Rick Barnes, right? They did it with the Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield, Jordan Bone group as they aged together. They became the hated team across the SEC, that every SEC gym would be packed when Tennessee came to town. And then right after that, they handed off to Santiago Vescovi, Josiah Jordan-James. This group, coming of age the last few years, has become that team also. So it's a great compliment. Look, when Tennessee, and I was there, when Tennessee stormed the field against Alabama, when they beat Alabama and ended that streak, that's a great compliment to Alabama football and Nick Saban. As mad as they want to be about it, it's a great compliment. When I'm watching on ESPN on a game that was featured on College Game Day, Tennessee and Alabama, and I see Alabama, the previous year's number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament out of the SEC, and previous year's SEC champion, when I look up on TV and I see some Alabama student with a backwards hat that reads, "I hate Tennessee," in Alabama colors, I think, man, that's a great compliment to Rick Barnes and this program and what he's built. The fact that other teams have their own themed "I hate Tennessee" hats on in their team colors, I think you nailed it, Jared. It's a great compliment to Tennessee and what Rick Barnes has done. And now add to the fact that they're not just winning at home. Tennessee has long been a great team at home at Thompson Bowling Arena, like a lot of good college programs. But this stretch run they've gone on now, entering this 4-game gauntlet that they had at the end of the year, they've won in so many different ways. They had to rely solely on Dalton Knecht to outscore Auburn 27-21 at home in the last 10 minutes and win that game. Then they go to Alabama. Alabama pretty much shuts down Dalton Knecht, and everyone else steps up, and they win a big game on the road. First time Alabama lost a home game in over 2 years, home SEC game in over 2 years. And then last night, Dalton Knecht has a good game, not a great game by his standard, and they win a low possession, duke it out, physical defensive game against South Carolina, playing the way that South Carolina wanted to play that game, and Tennessee never trailed the game and gets a win. It's a testament to Rick Barnes and this group. And to go back to your first question, it's why I really want to see this team get to a Final Four this year.
So I have a hot take. Chad Withrow is with us on the program. I have a hot take. And I was kind of saving this because it may be a topic that I have next week on the program, or maybe even tomorrow. I don't know. I think, now I'm not saying Tennessee fans should root for this because, I think this team needs to lose in Nashville. I remember when Kevin Stallings beat Kentucky and he cried into the towel, and that Anthony Davis Kentucky team, and Cal came out afterwards and was like, it's a good thing we lost because we needed that reset. We needed that moment of truth. And I think that was just Cal, trying to turn a negative into a positive at the time. I do think this Tennessee team could use a loss in the SEC tournament just so that they know they're not invincible, because with all the wins they've had and the way they've played, it would be hard not to think going into the tournament that you're invincible. But if you lose, say on Saturday in Nashville, you're going to stew on that when you go into the tournament, still probably as a 1 seed because the committee doesn't care about these conference tournaments anymore. I mean, I truly believe that this Tennessee, as a neutral observer, sure, I hope they do well and I hope the Tennessee fans enjoy it, but I think that they need a loss in Nashville. Your thoughts?
I had a buddy last night texting back and forth with. He's a Tennessee fan also, talking about the game. He says that he wants Tennessee to rest their starters and play freshmen against Kentucky on Saturday in Thompson Bowling Arena, since they've already wrapped up the SEC title by themselves. And I'm thinking, that's crazy. You don't want to completely take your foot off the gas and throttle down right now getting ready for the NCAA tournament. And Tennessee's not going to do that. They're going to go out and play the game straight up against Kentucky at home. But I think there's probably a little bit of truth to that. And the tournament, the committee has showed us they don't really care most years what happens in the SEC tournament. So I think the only thing that could jeopardize Tennessee's number 1 seed, it's not a loss to Kentucky, because that would just be another quad 1 loss. If they were to lose to a quad 2 or quad 3 team on Friday, let's say there's an upset, on Wednesday and Thursday, and they're playing some bad team on Friday and they get upset and lose, that would probably knock them, as long as Arizona takes care of business, that'd probably knock them from a 1 to a 2 behind Arizona. If they lose to 2 more quad 1 teams, I still think they're likely to be a number 1 seed, so it won't affect their seeding. I don't think it's going to hurt them if they lose. Here's the way I look at the Kentucky game and the SEC tournament for Tennessee. Just continue attempting to play at a high level, and whatever happens, happens. I'm not looking at this. I'm not relying upon, they need to get to Sunday, or, man, winning an SEC tournament title would be such a big deal. And that's simply because 2 years ago we saw Rick Barnes do that, and that's something that he's accomplished there. So I'm kind of just watching it and thinking I don't know that losing is necessarily a good thing. I definitely don't think it's a bad thing for them. So let's just play it straight up and see what happens. Obviously, no injuries. You don't want that to happen. Zakai Ziegler getting hurt second to last game last year affected that team, but they were still able to beat Duke and get to a Sweet 16. So just go play it straight up and see what happens. But I think it starts this Saturday with a game against Kentucky that on senior day, I don't think Tennessee's going to have any shortage of motivation in that game. But Kentucky's going to be motivated too. They've been playing better, and they gave up 104 points to Tennessee at Rupp Arena the last time these two teams played.
Sure, and I think Tennessee should go all in on all these games. But I'm just saying that, like, if they lose the Saturday, because, like, once the committee's pretty much got the bracket set anyways, if they lose that Saturday, probably to South Carolina or Alabama or Auburn or one of those teams that they've had to play in the gauntlet, I think it'd be good for them. Now,
you know what I think would be really good for Tennessee, just specifically in these games? I want either Kentucky or whoever they face in the SEC tournament to throw a junk defense at Dalton Connect. I think they need to see more of that. Alabama did it. They were running and jumping and double teaming him from the start, making him give it up. I think it's good practice for Tennessee to get accustomed to that, because whatever 16 or 15 seed they play in the first round is going to do something similar. I think Dalton Connect is going one-on-one and taking over the game. While it's fun to watch, that doesn't help prepare Tennessee for the tournament. We know that he can do that once he gets it going, but they're going to face some junk defenses in the tournament, and they got to know how to move the ball quickly and find the open guys and make sure the rest of the roster can step up when needed. So I'm kind of hopeful that one of these teams they play in the SEC tournament gives them a look they haven't seen yet.
So will you go to all the Tennessee games in the SEC tournament?
As long as it's not – well, now I know they'll play 11 a.m. next Friday for the first one. So, yes, I will definitely be at that one because our show's not until later in the afternoon. But, yeah, my plan is to be at every game that Tennessee's playing in the tournament, whether it's just Friday or Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So I expect you to root for Tennessee in all those games. But will you be upset if they lose? Let's say they lose on Saturday to Alabama, or they lose on Sunday in the championship to Auburn. Would you be upset about that? Or would you say, hey, maybe that's what this team, just a reality check before going into the tournament?
I think the only way I'm going to be upset is if they lose to, like, Missouri or Vandy. Yeah, right, like a quad 3 loss or quad whatever they are. Like a really bad loss on Friday where they just show up and it's clear that their heads weren't there. That's the only way I'm really going to be upset. I mean, if they lose to Kentucky or Auburn or Alabama or someone on Saturday or Sunday, I'm not going to be upset at all. I'm just going to keep my eye on the selection show and hope that they get the schools. Look, there's a lot of firsts going on here. Rick Barnes came in the season, and a lot of coaches say this, but rarely can someone pull it off. So they had 3 goals. Win the SEC regular season outright, which they did, not a share of the title. Win the SEC tournament, and play on Monday for the national championship. They didn't talk about winning it. They said play Monday. That was the goal all along. So one goal has been accomplished. They're going into this thing to win it, but then the biggest goal is still out there. So my eyes will be on Selection Sunday and seeing if Tennessee can get their first ever number 1 seed. They've never had that in program history. They've been a number 2 seed, I think, 4 or 5 times, but never reached a number 1 seed. So this could be another first for Rick Barnes and the Tennessee program.
Chad Withrow is with us from Outkick. The hot seat is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Chad Withrow with us from Outkick, again, kind enough to move up to Thursday with Barry Trotz joining us tomorrow at some point after the trade deadline. Chad, it is hot seat time, and I want to start with this question. Of the potential 4 teams that could be ahead of Tennessee in the NCAA basketball tournament, that is Purdue, Houston, UConn, and Arizona, which team do you think would be the worst matchup for Tennessee as their 2 seed or as the 1 seed with Tennessee in their bracket?
Well, I think the 2 worst matchups are the ones that have no possibility of being a 2 seed. So I'll give you 2 different answers. One is the one that's not going to happen, and one is the one that's likely to happen. UConn is the worst matchup for Tennessee. I think they're the best team in this tournament. I think Purdue is right there with them. Tennessee already played Purdue in Maui and lost that game. Close game, but lost that game way back in November. So those are the 2 worst possible matchups of the possible number 1s. The number 2 scenario that's worst for Tennessee, I think, would be Arizona as the high number 2 seed, just from a talent and offensive ability standpoint. I've been thinking about this a lot on if Tennessee is a number 2 seed, who would I want them matched up with as the possible number 1 seed? I think it's Houston. And I think it's Houston for this reason. Their offense is better this year than it's been, but they're so similar. Kelvin Sampson and Rick Barnes are so similar in style as coaches that it's all about defense first. And I just think Tennessee scores the ball better with Dalton Knecht than Houston does. So if Tennessee was going to be a 2 seed and matched up with a 1 seed, I'd want that 1 seed to be Houston. If Tennessee gets the number 1 seed and has to get matched up with a number 2 seed, I think probably Arizona would be the worst of those matchups. I wouldn't mind like an Iowa State who won last night against BYU at home. I know is a possible number 2 seed right now. I think that's probably a good matchup for Tennessee if they're the number 1. But right now, a lot can change. We still got this weekend and then conference tournaments. It's looking like Tennessee's going to be the number 1 seed out west. Arizona will be the number 2 seed. And Arizona would be the best seed in that scenario.
Number 2, Kentucky last night beat Vanderbilt 93-77. Kentucky has now won their last 4, and I believe that they have lost once in the last month, and that was by 1 point at LSU. Has John Calipari turned the Wildcats around, or is it just beating Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Vandy?
I think that he has not turned them around. I think they're starting to show their capabilities. And we've seen this all year. I mean, they are a team that can win the national title. I don't hesitate in saying that because they're so talented. I mean, they've got multiple guys who are going to be lottery picks if they decide to come out early in the draft. So they can score on anyone. And when they get it going, they're going to be nearly impossible to beat. The problem with Kentucky is the same problem with Alabama. They don't have a commitment to playing defense. They play defense when it suits them, when it suits their offensive style. And other times they're giving up far too many easy shots in games. So I'm not going to ride with Kentucky and Alabama as some teams I think are going to make the Final Four for that very reason. But we've seen the offensive ability of Dillingham and Reed Shepherd and all those guys, and Antonio Reeves, who's the best player, and he's a veteran guy for Kentucky. So I wouldn't say that Calipari has done something different or figured it out or anything like that. I just think this team has been able to show more of their offensive capabilities and showing how they can just outscore people the last couple of weeks. And I expect that to continue. I think it's a team that could go on a deep run given the right matchups.
The Broncos have announced that they are going to release Russell Wilson. Which trade will end up as the worst hit trade in the history of the NFL? The Broncos trade of Russell Wilson or the Browns trade for Deshaun Watson?
Whew. I mean, it's all about I think that, the Cowboys getting what they got years ago also, you would put that down as best trade, worst trade on the other side.
Sure.
The Seahawks part of this, I mean, who did they get in that trade? Charles Cross is who they drafted.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of who all they drafted.
I want to say it was like it ended up being 2 first-round picks, 2 second, and I can't think off the top of my head who Seattle drafted. I think they got the Devin Witherspoon, the corner, who I think is actually pretty good. They got him last year with Denver's pick. and they used their own pick on Smith and Jigba last year. So they got Witherspoon and Charles Cross and Noah Fant, and I don't know who the second-round pick was, and Shelby Harris, the defensive tackle, and Drew Lock in exchange for Russell.
Now, if the Seahawks turn that into a team that's going to go win a Super Bowl, that's likely the worst ever. The Texans got a haul too, correct?
Yes.
When they traded with the Browns?
Yes.
I think it's probably, right now I got to say that it's the Broncos because Russell Wilson is gone. At least Deshaun Watson still has a chance to do something with Cleveland. But if I'm trying to predict the future and say 5-10 years from now, what are we going to look back on and say is the worst? I think it's the Browns with the Texans. Sure, better than the Seahawks moving forward.
Well,
with DeMeco Ryans, with C.J. Stroud, with Will Anderson, with all those guys they have in that young core, I think we're going to look back when this to the playoffs and possibly competing for titles soon, and we're going to say that that's the worst ever because Russell Wilson was 2 and done and did nothing in Denver. At least Deshaun Watson, who we haven't seen signs of him doing anything in Cleveland, but at least he still has a chance because he's still on the roster with the Browns.
So my theory behind this is that I think that it's going to end up being Watson, not only because the Texans, got so much from that trade, but also because I actually think the Browns have a Super Bowl caliber roster. Like, not if Joe Flacco's the quarterback, but if they have a better quarterback. Like, if they had, Kirk Cousins as their quarterback, could this team with that great defense, good offensive line, good running game, good receivers, could they win the Super Bowl? But I don't think they have a prayer because when Deshaun played last year, he was terrible. And so I think that we're going to look back on it. We're going to say, man, Cleveland had some great teams that had they had Baker Mayfield as their quarterback and just stuck with Baker, they probably would have been better off than with Deshaun, who probably ends up holding this organization back.
I don't think anyone could have factored in or predicted the mental toll that all the scandal took on Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
Like, some people can compartmentalize their lives and they can, just work on the football part of it, and that's their job and that's their business, and all the personal stuff or legal problems or what people are saying about you, completely separate that. And
Ray Lewis didn't have a problem with that.
Tom Brady, right? Brady could go to work, I feel like, whether he's going through a divorce or whether people are saying that he deflates his footballs too much or whatever's going on, he channels that. It's fuel for him to be better at his job as a professional quarterback. I don't think Deshaun Watson has that. And I think that's the biggest thing that not a lot of people are talking about as to his demise in Cleveland. I think mentally he was destroyed by everything that happened, what was said about him, the whole legal back and forth, everything else. And that to me is what he's having a hard time recovering from. I think he's a guy who loves love and loves people loving him as the hero. He's even said that in interviews. And now that he's the villain, he can't handle it. Tom Brady's fine being the villain. Michael Jordan was fine being the villain. There are plenty of guys that they could be the hero or the villain. They don't care. Their one objective is to destroy you and to win games. I don't think Deshaun.
Chad Withrow's with us from Outkick on the hot seat. Okay, the Buffalo Bills yesterday released Jordan Poyer. Today, the Broncos are releasing Justin Simmons. The Eagles have released Kevin Byard. The Seattle Seahawks have waived both Jamal Adams and Quadre Diggs. Chad, has the safety position become the defensive version of the running back?
Yes, it absolutely has. It's become more and more interchangeable. I think everybody looks around the league and says, there's no Ed Reeds running around out there that are big time difference makers for a team, and some of these parts are very interchangeable. I think Kevin Byard's lack of success in Philly is a really good example of this. The Titans valued Kevin Byard big time, and rightfully so. He was a leader on that defense for a long time, but I mean, we see the value on the open market when he goes somewhere else, and he's not all that good. I think absolutely it's a devalued position. If you are a defensive back, just like with running back, all the running backs are concerned about the future of the position and the risk of injury mixed with the fact they're not getting paid like other positions. And I think the only solution to that is go play another position, because if you're a wide receiver, you're going to get paid more, right? If you're a defensive back, if you're a corner, not safety, you're going to get paid more. So it's all in a cycle, and maybe it cycles back to where safety is more valued and running back is more valued. But right now, yeah, safety is the running back position on defense for the NFL.
So here's my thing, too, on the safety front, which is, and I use Byard as the example. Byard, when he signed his contract in 2019, they had a pass rush, and they were decent, and he was decent. Then in 2020, their defense was horrible. They had no pass rush, and he was horrible. Then they signed to Nico Autry and Bud Dupree, and then they got a good pass rush, and then he was great. And so my theory is when it comes to safety, other than maybe Minkah Fitzpatrick, I don't think there's a single safety that changes any of these games. Your safety will be great if the guys in front of them are good, and your safety will stink if the guys in front of them are bad. And it's like running back. Like, nobody wins because of the safety anymore, and nobody wins because of the running back, and that's why teams don't invest in the running back.
I agree with you. And there's such a gulf right now on talent between offensive line versus pass rusher. Pass rushers are so much more athletically talented right now than offensive line in the NFL. So I think GMs are looking around and saying, okay, if we can make sure that we use that advantage and get a good pass rush and get good pass rushers against offensive lines, that there are still some good ones in the NFL, but most teams don't have a great offensive line. And they're trying to piece it together, and they're usually not all that successful against really good pass rushes across the league. So if you have a good pass rush, suddenly the safety position doesn't matter as much. And I think that's what teams are saying. So you start with that interior advantage that you have starting up front, and then you work your way back, and the furthest back you can go is safety. That's completely dependent on what the pass rush is doing, and you get into a situation where it really doesn't matter as much, and you can use a 5th or 6th round pick on a guy who could come in and be good as long as you have good pass rushers in front of him.
1 week from today, free agency will officially have begun. I mean, it begins 1 week yesterday on Wednesday, but we will be well into it. Day one will be past us. 1 week from today, Chad, will Derrick Henry have a new team?
No. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him. I don't think he's a day one guy. And I also think Derrick Henry's going to kind of sit back and feel out what exactly is going on in his situation with contenders. Derrick Henry's going to make this decision on winning. Sure, money's going to be a part of it, but I think he's going to try to decide which team is best for him to go possibly win a Super Bowl, and that's where he's going to end up. Miami's one that I've seen floated out there in certain reports that's interesting. So we'll see if that happens. But, I think Baltimore probably presumed to be the leader in the clubhouse. But, no, I don't think he's day one. But I think in relatively short order, he'll have his team.
1 week from today, will we be happy with the Titans spending of all that cap space in free agency?
Will we be happy as Titans fans, or will Jarrett Stillman be happy? Is the
Both.
question, because two different answers. Jarrett Stillman will absolutely not be happy about whatever happens on day one. I think Titans fans will convince themselves that signing the backup center from a team that couldn't even start over a mediocre center was a good move, and it's going to fix the offensive line. So Titans fans have become pretty good at convincing themselves that everything their team does is the right move and it's a smart move. So I think they'll be happy. I don't think Jarrett Stillman will be happy with what happens on day one. That's my prediction.
That's good because that makes me sound smart. Like, that makes it sound like, oh, no, Jarrett actually thinks about these things and not just, oh, yeah, my team did it. Way to go. Okay, last one for you. There has been a report, and I don't know if this report has been confirmed or not, but I think it's real. There has been a report that Messi will not play tonight against Nashville SC. Nashville SC did raise the ticket prices by 4 and 5 times for their season ticket holders for tonight's game against Messi. Did Nashville SC make a mistake?
No, they didn't. I mean, you charge what you can get, and we know the appeal of Messi here. So for them to overcharge for that, I don't think it's a mistake.
Even if Messi doesn't play?
Can't control that. That's a Miami decision. So, no, I would have done – I try to look at it from the position of, if I'm running that club, how would I run it? And I would absolutely gouge my audience because I know the audience is there for Messi. So I would charge an exorbitant amount for this one game.
By the way,
I have no issue from a business perspective what they did. And I don't think that they're risking losing any diehard fans or anything like that. What they're doing is they're bringing in Here's an example. I'm going to this match tonight. I've been to one Nashville SC match since they've been here, and I'm going to go tonight. So they're bringing in me. They're bringing in the third-party sports fan that otherwise would not be in their stadium for a game. And that's a cool thing to do every so often. So I've got no problem with it.
By the way, I'm looking at now. I think that might have been an erroneous report. I think Messi is going to play tonight.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right about that too. Chad Withrow on the hot seat as always. Chad, great stuff. Appreciate your time.
All right, Jared. Always fun. Have a great weekend.
Yep. Stillman and Company. We roll along from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
So we have one spot, and I've already been, a couple teams have already approached me for, would you do this? And I said, absolutely, I would do it, but I won't do it right now because it would be unfair because I think, they want to do it for a little smaller pieces. We're talking $1 million is a small piece. But if someone comes and says, this is a game changer for my team, I can do this, but you got to retain 4. Well, that's probably a second-round pick. And all of a sudden you get that second-round pick for really giving up nothing. So I'm going to hold on to that till probably the last day if I can and try to use it and try to get a real, I put the feelers out for that for sure.
Hey, that was Barry Trotz earlier this week. So if you're wondering, with the Predators at the deadline, are there more moves to come? The answer is yes, because they will take on a contract tomorrow. They will facilitate a contract trade tomorrow. Now, what they've done so far today, they traded a 5th-round pick to the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for Anthony Beauvillier. Did I miss that right?
Beauvillier.
Anthony Beauvillier. They acquired him today, and I was kind of trying to figure out why. The guy's got 4 goals on the season, but he did play for Barry Trotz in New York, and so clearly Barry Trotz knows he'll fit in with the chemistry, and I guess Barry thinks that he's probably not being used right. So that's the first thing. The second thing that they did was they traded Yakov Trenin to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for a 3rd-round pick in 2025. There were some prospects on both sides that changed hands, but I don't think worth wasting any time talking about here. And then they claimed Jarrett. Hold on. Oh, I got the guy's name right in front of me. The guy they acquired, Ian, the guy they acquired from LA.
Jarrett Anderson Dolan.
Jarrett Anderson Dolan. And this guy, I don't know what they're thinking about there. I don't know, what the point is. He makes $775,000. And Elliot was on the midday show. And today, Elliot was like, yeah, he tries hard. And I was like, oh, goody. So, I don't know what their plan is one way or another here, other than I think Beauvillier and his 4 goals are in to replace Trenin. Now, here's what I don't like about it. And somebody said this to me earlier today, and I think it's a pretty good point, which is it really worth it to move off Trenin to switch the 5th-round pick to the 3rd-round pick and bring in Beauvillier, who's got less goals than Trenin? Trenin's got 10 goals on the year. And I'm not saying Trenin's a goal scorer. Trenin is a bottom 6 checker forward type guy, but he still scores more than Beauvillier. But here's one thing I'll say. If we were talking about 1st-round picks or real assets or a high-end prospect, and they were trading him for a guy who has the stats that Beauvillier has, I'd be going crazy. But they didn't. They traded Trenin and a 5th-round pick. And I wasn't the biggest Trenin fan anyway. And I think they can go to Milwaukee, and they can probably get players who might be better. And so I'm all for that. I guess while I'm not a huge fan on the surface of the moves that they made today and okay, that guy goes out and this guy comes in, Barry Trotz has been right about a lot of things that a lot of people have questioned so far in his tenure. A lot of people were questioning the idea to sign Ryan O'Reilly to 4 years. And right now, I think Ryan O'Reilly's made a huge difference. So I'm going to give, I'm not going to be this guy that's in Barry we trust. We got to, that does not give you license to make a move that I think would be crazy. But I don't necessarily think that this is an earth-shattering, game-changing, change my feeling about the direction of the franchise type move. And tomorrow, I will not be surprised if the Predators make another move outside of the retaining a contract, which they will do. They can do that once. Barry said he's waiting till the last day to do it. But I think they'll do that. They'll pick up another extra pick, and then that will lead to what I believe is the long-term answer for this team, which is in this offseason, there will be a guy in this league who a team cannot sign because either they have too many good players or because the guy doesn't want to resign there and he'll be a high-end forward and he'll want to come here because the Predators are fun and because Nashville's great and because there's no state income tax and because they'll have the cap space to be able to do it. And if they acquire a bunch of these different little trade chip picks, then they'll be able to pile those in together with a prospect or two or something like that, and they'll be able to make the deal. And they'll get the high-end big boy forward at some point. Maybe not a McDavid, like that kind of guy, because you can't trade for that guy, but they'll get a goal scorer on that front. So I can't say I hate the moves. Can't say I really love them either. Can't say I totally understand them. But Barry will join us tomorrow and break that down when that's over. All right, big one tonight against Buffalo. You know, I only say big one if it is big. Predators Game Day's next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. List your house with TJ to get it seen, heard, and sold tonight. The Predators take on the Buffalo Sabres. The Predators 35, 25, and 3, good for 73 points. And the Sabres 29, 29, and 4, good for 62 points. They did ship out their top-line center yesterday to Colorado, and Bowen Byram, the defenseman from Colorado. Will he be in here tonight, Max? He is in there tonight. So we saw him Saturday with Colorado, and we'll see him tonight with Buffalo. Meanwhile, we start with the coach's take. Here's Andrew Burnett.
Can be a little bit sharper in all aspects. I think we play a little quicker with the puck. I thought we played a 50-50 game. We did some good things. We did some things that let Montreal kind of hang around the game, and they get a couple bounces. And it's we talked about after the game. That's what happens in 50-50 games. It's a coin flip.
Okay, so here's something I think is really important about tonight's game, and this is why I think it's a big game. Andrew Burnett said after the Montreal game that he felt like they didn't play up to the standard that they had established. And then he conceded the fact that it's hard to play up to that standard. I mean, where they won 8 in a row, and I agree. But they did not play well on Tuesday night. Well, let's not let that become a habit. Okay, so even though Buffalo is not good, and even if they lose tonight, they still have a pretty decent chance of making the playoffs, let's get back to the standard with which the Predators played with that put them in the position they're in the playoffs to begin with. And that's why I think tonight is a big game. Now, a couple of nuggets on our way out. For starters, taking a look at the playoff race tonight. The Predators are still in that second wild card spot, tied with Vegas, but Vegas has a game in hand and about $20 million in extra long-term injury cap space that you don't have. I guess they don't use the same cap that you use out there in Vegas, having acquired Noah Hannafin last night. Also, Jake Gensel has been acquired from Pittsburgh to Carolina. Now, I don't know, Ian, do we know what the return is for Gensel?
I have not seen that.
Okay, so we don't know what the return is for Gensel, but that's kind of the big name off the board. I actually thought that Gensel might be the guy that Barry Trotz was waiting to use that contract that he can hold on to, the contract slot to retain. I was wondering if Gensel was the guy they were waiting on. Clearly the answer to that is no. So we'll see tomorrow who they decide to roll with. So again, tonight, and then the schedule, if you're the Predators, the teams that you're hoping lose, tonight, we'll have to scoreboard watch. Not that they necessarily need it, but Calgary plays at Tampa Bay. You want Tampa Bay to win. St. Louis plays at Jersey. You want Jersey to win. And Minnesota plays at Arizona. You want Arizona to win. And then Vegas and Vancouver, you want Vancouver to win. And again, tomorrow, our program will be here from Bridgestone Arena because Barry Trotz will join us. The deadline is at 2:00. He will join us after the deadline to recap whatever it is they do. And we'll have our annual Stillman and Company free agency preview. Cannot wait. Max has the pregame show. That's coming up next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody right here tomorrow at 2:00.